9th of March, I'm calling the Finance Committee meeting to order.
And I am calling the Board of Selectmen's meeting to order as well. So, how are we starting this?
We have the minutes.
Okay.
I make a motion that we approve the minutes of March 2nd.
Second.
Any discussion, corrections, issues? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Do we have anybody on Zoom?
No,
Hi, yes, Tom Galvin is on Zoom.
he's not. That's,
Oh, I'm
yeah.
sorry.
Tim.
And then the second thing was, I left mine at home. I printed it. We have the reserve fund transfer from the electrical inspector for the $332.
I'll make a motion that we approve the transfer for the $332 as documented.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Nice job, Russ. Nice job. No, you're done. You're all set. You voted, you're all set.
Go home. See you later. Bye.
You're all set.
No, you're all set. They approved it.
Well, I wanted to explain to you what goes on.
Let's give the guy a chance.
Go ahead.
You can explain, it's fine. Thank you for coming.
Next time, don't hide in the corner, though.
You're spending your money. You're spending your money. You should know what's going on. Good evening, anyways.
Welcome.
I'd like to explain the cost of the late licensing and the CEUs that I had to get. Every year, every 3 years, this book is produced by the National Electric Code, and also the state has its own amendments. These are the state laws, basically. And every city and town has to provide an electrical inspector. That's the law. And in every 3 years, you have to get 15 CEUs. 15 hours of CEUs every 3 years, plus another 6 during the 3 years. So that's required.
What's your, here's what I was going to move your stuff this way.
He's small.
I'm small.
Inspectors are required another 6 hours for inspection, so there's 27 hours over 3 years. We have to get them within the first 6 months. I've taken the first 15 hours, and I've taken 6 hours for strictly solar. Solar is very, very popular today. It's unbelievable. I had an inspection the other day. The homeowner had to actually explain to me what was going on, how the system worked. He had a set of batteries, and he could, with his iPhone, he could turn the system on and off, nighttime, emergencies, all kinds of technical equipment that they used. So solar technology is constantly changing. That's why I took the 6 hours. I'm getting 4 or 5 permits a week, solar. I've got a stack of them. Let me see.
Are most of those on homes, though? They're not big fields?
Beg pardon?
Most of them are on homes now, not big fields?
Oh, that's even different.
You're right.
That's a whole other ballgame. Yeah. The other thing is I had to renew my master license. I had a master license for over 40 years, and I let it go last segment because I didn't need it. All you need is a journeyman's license to be an inspector. But now they're going to require a master license, so that's an additional cost. Let me see what else. This is a 2020 code. The 2023 code is out, but the governor hasn't signed it yet, so we're working on the 22 code. Now, I belong to 4 associations: International Electrical Inspectors Association, Mass Electric Contractors Association, and Mass Electrical Inspectors Association, which I get down once a month to Boston. Usually it's a Boston area, and I sit with a lot of inspectors, so there's a lot of, learning and going on there. So basically, that's what the funding was for.
So this was for your master's license?
The master license and the extra course. I had to take.
That book.
No, that book here,
Any questions?
I think we're going. Thank you very much.
No, but thank you for
We appreciate it.
explaining.
Exactly.
Thanks, Bud.
Thank you.
Okay, Seth. You're up.
Tamika sent you guys a email last week on the cleargov.com. Basically what we're trying to do is give the finance committee and the town tools necessary to, make this whole process much easier, and try to lessen the workload of multiple department heads, clerical staff, trying to keep the spreadsheet up to date, and the multitude of different versions that change daily, if not, weekly. The spreadsheet we're working off of goes back to Margaret, goes back to 2015, and it just keeps adding, each year we just keep adding, additional columns. And, as the town gets bigger, the budget gets bigger, we start adding line items and start adding, different columns and rows in. We're basically one formula away from a disaster. So there is software out there that will streamline this whole process. It'll be in real time. Anyone can log in from anywhere and see the actual worksheet in progress. There's a lot of different items that it will do. It will track personnel as far as when they do steps, and we don't have to maintain that huge spreadsheet on just individual staffs, and what a 1% COLA would be, what a 2.5%, so different iterations of a process could be easily done. It does capital planning. It will do forecasts for revenue, forecasts for expenditures. Tamika and I sat through a demo last week, and it was just, I wasn't trying to exclude anyone. It was just, let's try to get some information. Obviously, it won't be available for this current fiscal year that we're in now. We have a new town administrator, hopefully starting shortly, with that individual's input. Hopefully we can bring something forward as a town to make this process easier. So I just encourage you to look through the information that was sent, look at the hyperlinks to different area towns that are using it. Holden is going to be starting on board with this very shortly. And there's opportunities for us to apply for a Community Compact IT grant in October to pay for the first year of this. So we're just looking at different ideas, and I just wanted to bring that opportunity forward to make Tamika's life a little easier, and everyone else that has their hands in on this on a daily basis. That's all.
What's the cost?
Yeah.
Cost is $34,000 a year.
34,000 a year?
Correct.
Any questions?
Seth,
Yes, sir.
I haven't had a chance to poke real far into what you sent along. Do you have any idea how many competitor-type softwares there are out
There
there?
are a few, and we need to really look into what our accounting software is capable of doing. It's worth switching vendors on that side of it to see if we change the Vadar, if Vadar would have a budgeting process that would help all this. So we need to really look at all these different options as well.
So it could potentially replace something we're already spending money on?
No,
No.
not necessarily.
Okay.
This software that I proposed, whatever we build out the budget, once it's built out, that can be imported into SoftWrite or Vadar. So that it has the ability to move that information into our accounting software vendor.
Okay.
And then as the accounting system changes during the year, you can actually have an online checkbook. So people could actually see, where all the expenditures are going, talk about transparency, to see that. Shrewsbury is probably the biggest town around that is operating it. So if you went to their website, you can see it and you can see their revenues. Shrewsbury did an $8.9 million override 3 years ago. And this is how they sold it to the public, was the transparency and getting the information out so people could see it on a real-time basis and look at the history over several years of where their money is being spent.
You mentioned, with the new TA coming on board, there's a possibility they may come in with
Absolutely.
something they already
absolutely.
use or
Right.
prefer. All right, so that might be a question worth
Yes.
asking one
Yep.
day. All right.
So,
Go ahead. Just make it quick, because we got a lot going on tonight.
So as you all know, we do have a new town accountant. She actually is looking to switch the accounting package over to Vadar, and Vadar does have a budgeting packet in there. The cost for the initial setup for Vadar is $32,000, but then annually, the cost is $42,000.90 to support that, which currently SoftWrite's cost to support their budget is $6,600. So it would be a savings. We'd have to pay the amount up front, but then it does have a budgeting packet all in there. And Vadar is what's used for all the tax collections and all the revenues and that type of stuff. So it would make it more of a streamline.
How much did you say the subsequent years were?
$4,290.
Thank you.
And Vadar will also spread that initial cost over a number of years. Actually, they quoted it to go over 6 years.
Any other discussions?
Certainly something to look into.
Yes. Thank you very much, Seth.
yep.
Okay. Now we're gonna meet with treasurer and collector regarding her new position.
If I may, through the chair,
Yes.
before I know Becky's here, and part of the reason that she was coming here was for that. It's not shown on your spreadsheet, but today that position, as well as another for general government, has been scrubbed with the latest revelations, so.
Okay. So the 16,592
Correct.
is gone.
And that's with on the balanced budget that was submitted to make everything fit. So if you'd still like me to explain why I'm looking for the position, I would appreciate it.
Sure, go ahead.
Well, it's for let's see, I'll move on this thing.
I think it's mislisted here. It says secretary.
It's a
Payroll clerk.
Right. Payroll HR assistant. Currently, there's 2 people in the office, and this position that I'm looking for is for 15 hours a week at OED. Step 1 would be $21.11. With the changes and the growth in the community, I'm the person that does payroll. I do payroll. I do all the HR. I do tax collections. I have one other person that processes we just sent out 9,000 tax collecting excise bills. I'm at a point where I can't do anymore. I need somebody, just even 15 hours a week, to help take some of the burden off the office. I know there's a lot of reporting information that people need. There's a lot of assistance that you all have asked for, that it takes me a long time to get to it, because every 2 weeks I have to do the bills and the payroll and get everybody enrolled in their health insurance and stuff like that. I'm at a point where we need help in our office. It's,
You pay the bills?
I do. I submit the bills to the accountant.
The accountant doesn't do that?
I submit the health insurance bills. So
Oh,
they
the
come
health
to me.
insurance bills.
I approve them, I
Okay.
give them to the accountant.
Okay.
She puts them into the system.
Okay, that's the
But-
thing, I was like, wait a second.
But there's a lot of, I do all the benefit bills. I process them, I make sure that they're accurate before I give them to the town accountant. So there's a lot of that type of stuff. Right now, if I got hit by a bus, nobody would do the payroll. We'd have to figure out somebody to do the payroll. I'm at a point where we need to do something else in the office. So that's why I'm asking for this 15-hour position. It was in the budget, I think, back in 2020, and we cut it for the last 3 years, and it's just, with the growth in the community, it's just not feasible to not have somebody else help with that position, so. And I didn't know if there's any other items on my budget you wanted to discuss.
So, just through the chair, Seth, from the perspective of the software, would the software facilitate or create the efficiencies that might relieve some of the?
No.
They would not. So reporting and printing of the checks or submitting of bills and that kind of stuff? No. Okay.
That's all going through those bills and dividing them up. It's an arduous task, I know.
What's that?
Going through and divvying up the bills, this goes to this account, this goes to this account, this goes to this account, and I get it.
I didn't know if you had any questions about debt, if you had any questions about health insurance.
So the health insurance that you have, I noticed it went down in the balanced budget.
That's with the staffing cuts, the insurance will go down.
Okay, so my question is, maybe you know this, with the staffing cuts, what would our unemployment be?
We estimated that to be about $300,000, and the thought was to take that from stabilization. We're in dire straits. It's that.
I get that, but you're not gonna be able to sell both. Taking a 2.5 override and doing from stabilization, so we need to know that it's $300,000 in unemployment.
We wouldn't do both.
It'd be one or the
We
other.
wouldn't be asking for an override.
If you had the unemployment. The override would be for the 1.9, for $2 million.
Where would for the unemployment would be transfers to trust, that's where that would go.
Correct. That little $7,000 we put into our unemployment account.
Right, just to make sure.
Yeah, so the balance in the unemployment is 57,000 right now. We have about 35,000 that's coming out of there for some claims that we have. We pay on an as needed basis, so that would have to go up. There's about 25,000 left in there. And we are looking at, we did get quote, I don't know, I'm just gonna throw out some health insurance stuff for you. We got quotes from Harvard Pilgrim to see if which actually came in at a 4% increase instead of a 10.5% increase, which is where Maya actually ended up. We actually have more people enrolled in our plan than last year. So even though it's showing, if it went up 4.5%, I'll come back with another number once we finalize everything with the IAC. We have 82 people enrolled this year, where we had 79 that I budgeted for last year. So our plans are good. People are enrolling in them. we're still looking at doing a health insurance buyout to try and see if people can get on the spouse's plan, which will reduce the cost there, so. And increasing, one of the other things that we're doing is increasing the deductible from $250, $750 to $1,000, $2,000. So, those are some of the things we're looking at.
With the increase, did you look into the HRA?
I did. The cost for HRA, I mean, we would, so if we switched to Harvard Pilgrim and did increase the deductibles to $2,000, $4,000, it would decrease our premium by 4.39% from over the level we're at right now. But we would have to contribute, like for an individual plan, you can contribute up to 50% of those deductible amounts. So you do $1,000 for an individual and $2,000 for a family, times the number of people that we had, that adds $100,000, plus the admin costs. It's about $100,000 that'll get added back to the budget.
How many people, though, used over the first half of their deductible? The agent can't tell us exactly who, but should be able to say, out of the 82 people enrolled, you had 15 people who went over half.
My understanding is that you have to set that aside for everybody. You have to set that money aside and budget for it in case everybody needs it. It's not a as needed basis.
It's usually a percentage in my
It's,
experience.
I know us, we didn't have to do anything. We're self-funded, we fund it as needed. But yes, we would have to budget it, but
Yeah,
that's not
it's-
necessarily that we're gonna need it.
Right. But maybe there's a difference between private industry and the way the municipal governments, but he just gave me an estimate of $100,000 that we would have to have sitting in there to use.
So we can't do as needed funding.
Right. Because I'd have to budget for it.
Budgeting is different than having the money sitting there. If the money has to sit there in an account, because there could be that you have to fund the account.
Which
Or
is through the budget.
Hold
You
on
know
a
what I mean?
second.
Yeah.
But if it sits on their books and the money has to go out, that's different than if we fund it as we need it. Where we pay it as we need it.
If you don't spend the money at the end of the year,
It comes back. So we could hedge bets that way versus putting it, it's kind of like snow and ice. You know, we hedge bets every year.
It's still, even if I got rid of that and took a 2004, if I, with the $100,000 for an HRA, the enrollment that we have right now, the FY24 budget is $1,026,000. If I take $100,000 off of that, it's still more than what we budgeted last year, by almost $100,000. Because we have more people enrolled.
All right, any other questions? And you took out yours too? You took out your
Yes,
position as well?
Yes.
Okay, so. Sure, go right ahead.
Snow and ice.
Go right ahead.
For the chair.
Yep,
We can deficit spend snow and ice because it's considered an emergency.
I agree.
But the other one, can you deficit, that's not an emergency.
Yeah.
Will you have to level fund it?
We could do a lot of different things, but that's neither here nor there for tonight, but I could, we could put in a minimum and then,
Because we're not supposed, once we run out of an account, we're not supposed to deficit.
that is correct, and then we could do reserve fund. We do that a lot. So we could do it through reserve fund transfers if we had to, but we were just looking at some ways to, there should be a way for them to be able to say this is how many people used it last year, and then you can kind of figure out if it's worth it. But
I only brought it up because
nope, nope.
we closed out the year high. And we, to hit the balanced budget, we had to go back to last year's number. Put it wide open on some nights.
So now I have to go see. The total is on this, to see if that equals what the total on living. No, because it's off, because of the 300,000, but that's fine. Okay. All right. So, who wants to start the discussion in regards to the 2.5 override? Everyone's seen all the information. I don't think we have to.
So you're not going to discuss the TA's budget?
No, we were just discussing that one position. That's all that was on the agenda, because everything else is just the normal stuff.
So we all know we need an override of sorts. So are you looking to set it at 2 million, or you want to ask for 3? What is your intent? What is the numbers you think we need?
I'd like the numbers to stay set for 24 hours so that we could actually analyze them, and we haven't gotten to that point yet. We don't have really good numbers in some of these things, and we're gonna have to revisit them, because we don't have dispatches in for a guess, and we don't think that that's legitimate.
Right, and we've reached out to them again.
I know,
so-
so that's what I'm saying, so that's not there. We don't have, what was the other thing? I wrote down a whole bunch of stuff. We have to, in my opinion, we have to take into effect the 300,000 for unemployment, because I don't think that's a good idea to take that out of stabilization.
Right now, you have a surplus with the balanced budget that you asked for, 62,000 and change, after scrubbing those 2 positions. And I know, Karen, you mentioned something about the trust, so we didn't put the 7,000 into the trust. We're just shy of the 35,000 for the revolving, so I can certainly move some of that here, there, and everywhere, if you like. As you all know, last week we did ask to do the best I could with the balanced budget. I did the best I could. Honestly, gut-wrenching, heartbreaking, but it is what it is. The 2 services in town that would be lost, I feel, are just as important as any other service in town, and I hate to see that loss. I strongly support, recommend a 2.5 override for the needs-based budget, which is roughly 1.9, which is, again, roughly about $1.47 per thousand to be added to the tax rate. On the average home, it would cost the average homeowner about $500 a year.
But that's only with the 2% for dispatch.
Yeah.
And do we think that...
But we have that.
And what do we have in there for DPW? Okay, we do, okay. And we think...
But that's in negotiating.
I know that. I just want to make sure that that's closer. I think that's probably closer to the right side than the other.
I would be more concerned about mentioning that amount while
And
it's
that's
in the
why-
negotiation phase.
And I agree. And that's why I'm saying that's over on this side versus, and I'm just, when it comes right down to it, we want to make sure the numbers that are in here before we set a number are good, and I think we have some numbers that are still kind of wishy-squishy.
May I ask? For the needs-based, is that what the department heads are coming in and saying that they need? Like pretty much everything, so the additional personnel,
Right,
the additional boost over to kind of catch up from what they lost last year
Correct.
and where they kind of really should be with size and status and everything, that's considered needs-based, and it's not,
Right.
okay, not to level service or
Correct.
anything, okay.
And that's with the projected, we won't know till after tonight,
Right.
the 9.55.
Right.
So,
Within reason too, I would say. It did not seem like anyone was asking for crazy things.
No, I was.
No, that's what I'm saying. I'm just saying that it was added in needs within reason.
Right, and I guess that was part of my point is I feel if, I supported the override 2 years ago because we could have not been in such dire straits last year and going into this year. But I think it's insulting to go to the town for, in my opinion, for a small amount just as a Band-Aid for this gushing wound. So I would rather get us to a point that we are able to say that you're going to see some significant service improvements for the money that you're spending versus you're spending money and you're not gonna see anything different over this year. So I guess that's,
Well, that's what I was getting at with
Yeah.
Karen. Because, in my opinion, we should be looking at not 1.9, we should be asking 3.
well, and I think that's,
And yes, we need it.
yeah, I was just gonna say, I think that that's not unreasonable, but I think that we also have not done and I am included in this, not done a good job as far as to Seth's point in the software budgeting aspect, accounting for showing people where that money is going. And I think historically it's been a Band-Aid to fix a bleeding wound. Like, they come here and they have the balanced budget, yes, but it's been a Band-Aid to fix a bleeding wound versus.
We've always, I resent, hold on. I resent the fact that we're not transparent. We've always shown what the departments have asked, what the TA has brought, and what the finance committee, we've always shown all three. And we've been doing that for at least 12 years.
I think her point is, though, if we go for an override, where's that money going?
And I get that, but I'm saying that
So that's
this,
the
the way it
concern.
is, we are very transparent. Everyone
Right.
sees what's going where.
Right, because it's always cuts. But I think, I agree, if you're going to do an override, people want to know what they're going to get for their money. So we need to
And the
be
nice
very
thing is,
specific.
so now the problem is the department requests were from here, were 27,116, and the TA request is 27,121. So, we're gonna go with the TA request? This is a spreadsheet I'm doing this week.
Okay.
So I haven't had the chance to go through to see, well, I see here you increased the town accountant, you increased from the department request of 41,500 to 42,330. On the town accountant salary line. So that's where part of the difference is. I'm just trying to look to see so that we have good numbers so I can see where we're headed. And I'm looking through the department request and the TA request. Level service was 40. And this is the spreadsheet we got this week electronically.
The TA request, just 42,330.
Right. Okay. Need to do level services.
Let's assume the higher number and move on.
I guess I want to understand why. Why, when the department asked for 41,500, you came in and said 42,330.
I have to do the calculation for cost of living if that was added in, Karen, to be honest with you. Because we went back to 40 for that position. And the only thing I can say about it is because we switched accountants and maybe I just overlooked it.
Yeah. We cut out there. You cut down the planning board?
The planning board, yeah, they requested, they wanted an additional stipend for being a member, but no other stipends were increased around the board, so I left it at the same. They requested, yeah, they wanted to double their stipend.
They wanted to bring it back up to where it was, so we cut all of them, I don't know how many years ago. It's been a long time.
7, 8 years ago.
I was gonna say, I know it's been a long time, we cut everybody.
I mean, I personally have a little bit of an issue with stipends. This is me personally, in general, when we're looking to cut everything else. That's my personal piece.
This would be the TA budget though, which would be without the cuts.
Right.
So it would be the attempt to bring people back up, which,
Right.
in fairness, whether we want to give that to them or not, that's, you're basically requesting that we don't.
And I think Gary's point is that all the stipends, nobody considered increasing, was only one, so I think he was probably all or none.
To keep it fair.
I was gonna say, if they were at one point higher, and then there's consideration for one to go higher, then I would think all
would.
Right,
should go
all or
higher.
none, yeah.
But my stance still is the
Right,
same.
but I mean, the planning board was the only one that thought about it,
Right.
so.
If I'd have thought about it, we wouldn't do it.
So you could look at it as, it's not needed by those because they didn't ask for it.
Maybe the finance committee could give up their stipends.
Yeah, I'd be more than happy to. They'll give back our stipend. Whole whopping $0. We have it
I
give
think
back.
that's multiplying by 0, and that doesn't go well.
I think that goes to Leah's point about stipends.
Yeah. Okay, so then by the TA budget, that means that we'd be looking for 1.8.
1.86, yeah.
But that 1.8, is it good for 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, or is it?
No, once you do it, you do it. It's forever.
No,
No, he's saying it's going to get us.
2 years from now, are we?
Just a Band-Aid.
Right, are we gonna-
Man's gonna.
Well, I mean, some of the things we talked about was grant writing, I mean, other resources that we really could use. So obviously, I agree with Skip, if we're gonna do it,
Right.
you wanna do it right.
And to Skip's point also, if we're gonna do it that we have some foresight that hopefully it's, with current planned projections, it would last us X number of years, and so it's not in next year, we're
5
back
to 8
here.
years at least.
It's not, next year, we're back here looking for a Band-Aid. Obviously, there's a lot of volatility in our numbers in today's situation, but I think that was some of my long-range planning piece of like, look, to say, hey, we need this chunk of money and this is what you're gonna get for the estimated next minimum 3 to 5 years or whatever.
Like you said, though, we're gonna have to explain how we would utilize that money. Maybe
Right.
getting somebody to write grants or some of the neglected buildings that need attention, or, some of the things we've talked about, money towards purchasing land. We haven't had the ability to do some of those things. But we need to come up with a list of how we would utilize that money. If you're gonna try to get buy-in from you.
Unfortunately, I think we're a little late to that game. I would also say that, as Gary mentioned, it's about 500 per year per taxpayer for the 1.8, 1.9, whatever you want to call it, or
Right.
2 million. And if you were to put that to 3, you're talking 750. People think 750, they think 1,000. So all of a sudden you have 1,000 versus 500. Mental math, you're gonna have an easier sell on a 500 a year versus a 750 for whatever reason. That's just the truth.
So
As stupid as it is.
now here's a stupid thing, but I'm gonna bring it up because it's the right time since you guys are interviewing next week. You've seen the budget that we have for the TA. Do we think that's a legitimate number that we can hire one of the candidates that you have?
No,
Or does that need to change?
probably gonna be higher.
Well, and it's gonna progressively change too, so we need to be realistic.
Exactly.
Right.
But let's start out from a correct starting point and then go forward from there.
What's the-
I mean, not just
What are they?
oh, this will be fine, and then, whoops. Yeah, no, I know.
But it's always posted in the range, so it's not always.
Right, but
Okay, but
I think
we're,
they were Community Paradigm was hesitant saying that this number was on the low end of what we were looking for.
But
So-
they did say.
Right, but they did say, and so I think that to be completely transparent, I don't know that I think that that's a low number, but.
Right, so I guess what we're
So
gonna.
she's getting at, so what's a more realistic?
What's a more
number?
realistic number? Because you guys have been having these conversations. You guys have to let us know what's a more realistic number to put in there, and then we can kind of look forward and go, okay, figure this and this and this and this and.
But I don't personally feel comfortable saying anything. We haven't.
I understand.
It's posted at that.
And
we have to
I'm not saying you have to say it here, but I think
Yeah.
we're gonna need that number for our future discussions. So by next week, we'd like something so that we can put it in here and move forward, because we have to do an iteration on a budget that does not have the 2.5 override in it, and I don't think in my opinion, we're not there yet.
May I ask another question? For the override question, does it have to be fully assessed at the time that it's approved? So if we went for a higher override, to Alex's point, a $3 or $5 million override, but we need the $2 million this year, we don't need to fully assess at that price, that upper amount until.
I think you need to make a decision. You always go lower, but I don't think you can use the balance going forward. I think you either, you'd have to double check.
No, because you would raise your levy capacity, 5 million, whatever it is,
Right.
and you're only gonna raise and appropriate up to
To
whatever
what you
you
need.
are.
Right.
And next year, you'll still have that availability.
Right.
Plus the 2.5
So it's still there, because
Because
I remember
Shrewsbury did
Ron saying.
8.9 million, and they plan on using that over 10 years to slowly grow into that.
You just taxed below your
Right.
levy capacity. Right now, we're at the maximum levy
Right.
capacity, so you put your budget stays below that amount.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think in other wealthier communities, they rarely have to tax at their levy capacity. I think even Holton hasn't been having to tax at their levy capacity. And so I think that doing a higher override just gives us some additional levy capacity space that then I would argue we need to have a plan for what that money is going to.
But they still want to know where that money's going.
Right, but it's not a guarantee that it's going to be, everybody's gonna be hit this year. it would
No,
not
they'd only be hit they'd only be taxed at what we use,
Exactly,
but we just would have that ability to spend
right,
it more.
right.
Again, a tougher sell though.
Yes.
I don't think people buy that one at all. Really don't think they will.
Well, we still have to get the budget approved, so they would still have to vote on the raise and appropriate. So theoretically, they would have some power over what the actual tax levy would be at the end of the day. Now, again, that's
I think it's,
Right, even though you have capacity, the budget still has to be approved.
right.
right, and I think it's a different mindset because we are so accustomed to just taxing at our capacity and then making do, where this would provide that long-term planning opportunity that we don't have to tax at that full capacity and we have abilities to bring in as the town grows, because we know it's.
So I'm gonna be the unpopular one and bring up the last time we did an override for municipal services. And the following year, all of it went to Wachusett. And if you don't think that's not gonna be brought up on the floor, I can tell you 6 people that I know that are gonna bring that up. That entire extra capacity went the following year from municipal services to Wachusett.
Right, and that's what's
And that's
burnt us
always
over the
going to
years.
be the hardest part. If we put more to help, we always risk the ability for the schools to take it out from underneath us.
Basically what's happening this year.
Yes.
I mean, if we're asking for 1.9, we're giving 1.4 to the school.
Right.
Yep.
And I
So,
guess
Exactly.
part of my hope was that having a larger override discussion would include the schools, not necessarily, because we know that they have capital plans and everything in the works also. And my hope would be that there would be some thought that the school is going to reasonably need a certain amount and include that in, not take all of it, but that it's a conversation with the district as well. And same for Bay Path. Bay Path is in a little bit of a different situation. Our numbers went way down, so but when the schools as a whole make up such a large percentage of our budget, I think it's very hard to exclude them from some of these bigger budgeting conversations when they account for, what, 60 to 70% of our total budget.
Last count was 54.
Yeah. Is that with including BayPath
Is that
also?
all schools?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so people need to understand that, right, we're not asking to increase our internal budget to $2 million because a big chunk is going towards the school. So when we're asking for a large amount, so if they're willing to spend that much more money on the school, you know, aren't they willing to invest that much more in the other departments in town for the services? I mean, how can you justify that kind of an increase in the school and still cut or not support increasing the taxes for the rest of the
That has been the reality.
No, I know it's been the reality, but it doesn't make sense.
We
I don't
have to
think
just sell it. We
People
have to
just don't
sell it.
understand it. They just,
Yeah, but people, I mean, selling it is one thing, but people have got to be able to see what they're gonna get for it.
right, it's got to be spelled out what the.
I mean, from the perspective of Joe's area, just the streets alone, it would be easier to sell if you were able to say, all the roads in town are gonna be paved. Brand new roads, it's gonna be wonderful, and, you know, all the equipment are on it. But if you don't, if you appropriate the money for that kind of thing and you don't do it, it's not gonna go over. Same thing here. How do you go ahead and provide vision of what will happen? I don't know that you can. I mean, for the simple reason, as Karen says, next year, schools come in.
And I think we could ask the schools if they want, but I think they're, from what I'm hearing from their discussion, they're kind of up to here in muck from last administration trying to fix it. They're not able to even get their nose out of the muck at this point, so I don't know if they could really give us what they think they're gonna spend in the next 3 years.
No, but they will tell you that they're going to ask for more.
They're gonna ask.
Right, they're always gonna ask for more. So,
So, no, I mean, I understand the philosophical statement around, we should look at what we need, let's go ahead and go for it and get it, but if we can't provide some discussion with the town, at the town meeting, in preparation of the election, then we're gonna be back, as Karen said, we're gonna be back cutting stuff out of it. We're gonna have to have something that's not gonna look pretty.
well, and the last thing we need to do is be telling people that, yep, you're gonna have a raise up in taxes, and then next year it's like, oh yeah, all those things that we gave you last year were taken away.
Right.
Because we went through that, and we don't wanna do that again.
Well, that's why it's been so tough to really get support and sell it override because people were hurt before. But.
Yeah.
So how do we stop that from happening?
That the watchers just straighten out their own mess before they come asking us for money. It's not our fault they lost it.
Well, I also think too, the biggest piece is, it can't be the 5 selectmen and the 7 finance committee members that are out there beating the drum. This has to be, every single department head has to tell people the importance of the 2.5 override and what it's going to bring for them. It's getting out there and telling them, we need the 2.5, otherwise we're not gonna have this, we're not gonna have this, we're not gonna have this, we're not gonna have this. And it has to be, you guys see the people, you guys have the interactions. We can put up all the PowerPoint presentations and all the lists in the world. It has to be when you guys are talking, listen, if you don't vote for the 2.5 override, we need the 2.5 override because it's going to affect this, 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 and this. So people who come into the fire department and dispatch, they see it right there. When they come in to pay a tax bill, they see that. You know, I know that Director Buckley does it already on Facebook, stating what the budget allows and what the budget doesn't allow. And it's that kind of stuff that has to be put out there if this is going to sell. It's going to be all of us, because it can't just be the 5 selectmen and the 7 finance committee. It has to be everybody that has to sell it. Because it's going to be a tough sell.
So we're gonna have to come up with
A good
estimate number, a good number.
Right.
And we're gonna have to have discussions, because I know you want to discuss the timing of the town meeting and the override. Are we not gonna be able to do it as scheduled? Is that your intention?
Well, we gotta look now, because I think I gotta talk it over with the finance committee, but I don't know if any of you guys are. I'm gonna be honest. I am not comfortable bringing this balanced budget with the cuts to the floor. I don't want to be sitting up in front of everyone bringing this to the floor, so I think we have some tweaking to do.
What do you mean you're not comfortable?
I'm not comfortable going up in front of the taxpayers and telling that we're going to shut down 2 departments.
Well, the other thing that's always been
Choice do we have?
difficult is everything's contingent on the override.
Exactly.
And then when the override doesn't go,
Right.
so if you have the override obviously before the town meeting,
But you gotta sell it, that's the problem.
well, no, I'm saying at least you know whether you did sell it or not. If you don't know you sold it, then you're going thinking you're gonna be able to continue with these departments, and then you're gonna have to make the cuts and,
Well, you always do the multiple iterations. So if you vote for the override, it's this column.
Right.
If the override passes, it's this column. If it doesn't, it's this column. And you guys tell me, I'm not comfortable with what we have here. I'm not. Gary,
So,
thank you very much. I know it's a lot of work,
I'm not comfortable either. This is like
but
I
I'm
said-
not comfortable
I said
because
earlier, those 2 functions are just as important as any other 2 functions. And it's very important, and to your question, your remarks, actually, Tamika and I have talked about this, about putting each department head on camera and putting it on the channel, because we've seen how many people respond to a public informational session before.
Right.
We've got to get it out there.
Yeah,
I agree.
and it's all of that, but so my only thing would be is that we have, the best, in my opinion, the best way to sell it to more of the people is to have the town meeting and then the election like we do. If we don't do it that way and we do the election and then the town meeting, I don't know if we're gonna catch them, because I'd love to say that those people, that the folks that come to the town meeting at the annual town meeting are going to get educated before the town meeting. Yes,
Do you mind if I ask a question?
go right ahead.
So, for each of the 2 departments you want to close, what is the savings to come up with a balanced budget?
It's like 600,000 in total, I think.
Departments that you're gonna close, what's the
No, it's closer to 4, it's like 295 and,
But it costs in other
but
areas.
it costs in other areas, that's the
All
thing.
right, so I just want to put this out here. I'm here at the request of the town administrator, as is Chief Knight, because we sat in a room on Monday, and the town administrator looked at us and said, you have to cut $300,000 out of your budget. I couldn't go to sleep when I went out.
Yep,
Public Works is now down to 1.5 people
Yep.
for 80 miles of road. It's not a realistic number.
no, it is not.
Just want to put it out there.
No, and listen, I don't deny that. I don't deny the cuts that we've made in the fire department or the police department, because cutting out overtime isn't realistic. You're going to have overtime. People are going to get injured.
So-
People are going to be out. We're going to need overtime.
So how much is the total cuts? Did you make, what was it?
For the 3 departments?
For the 3 departments
Total,
and the 2
everything.
closed, total cuts to make a balanced budget?
DPW was 299, fire was 270, police was 300.
And then the other
then-
cuts you had to do?
Total, it was over.
And then the cuts besides, it was additional cuts of
To
384,000.
hit what number in total?
The total cuts
25.
was about 1.3 million.
1.3.
So
Yeah,
we're
which is what
1.3
they're-
million under a balanced budget.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's the number people have.
Yep,
We
1.3.
had to cut 1.3 out of that to make that
And
balance.
that balanced budget does not include the unemployment that will need to be paid.
Right.
Yeah.
I just have a question. So, in my mind, going to the floor with a budget that has such significant cuts in it is what's going to sell the direness of the situation.
Absolutely.
And then my other question is, if people aren't comfortable with those cuts, where else do we take it from? Because I feel like we haven't found any alternative suggestions, and I feel like we kind of talk about it in a big picture, but we don't actually have like a workable plan.
No, we're gonna have to we're gonna go through what we did.
Who does that is my question.
It's gonna have to be, it's gonna be us.
I don't think there is any place though. I think everything is pretty, I mean,
Yeah.
you look at it, it's
You can't-
contractual.
There's just too many things. We've gotta spread the cuts. It can't just be You can't hit 25% of the public, of the taxpayers by shuttering something that 25% of our taxpayers use. You can't. We have people that use this library for meetings. We have people who use this library for computers, Wi-Fi, all of those things. If that's not available, that's going to hurt another set of population of this town. We can't maybe fund it completely, but we have to start thinking of not just cutting it straight. I don't know what the answer is. I wish I had a magic wand. I don't. But I can't, in good faith, go in front of the town floor and say, yeah, this is all we could do. I think we have to, every year it's the same thing. It's a difficult situation, but you gotta look at things differently and go through and say, okay, maybe we cut this, and maybe we take some of this, and it's messy, but we're gonna have to go through and do it, because I don't think shuttering 2 departments is a smart thing to do. I don't think that's smart for the town. Nancy?
Can I just ask, I know I walked in here late, were you insinuating or thinking that, is the override gonna solve the problem, or you think the school will come back again in a year or 2 and we're gonna be sitting having the same conversation? Is that what you were saying when I first came in?
Yeah.
So then that's not really a,
Well, we're gonna go back and look and see, everyone's gonna look, and we're gonna kinda look at some of the numbers, the finance committee as well as the select board, and we're gonna see what the numbers should really be, and maybe a week and a half.
so a bigger override?
Then just to fix this.
Oh, yeah, I don't think there's any way you can avoid that, to just do the amount.
Right. But we have to put specific things. We just can't say we need $6 million over the next 10 years, because we need to be able to state where we see those things going.
So you got 2 things going on. You got the, I need this, and this is where it's gonna go. And then you have the, well, if I can't have that, what has to come out? And that's gonna be the tough part.
Would it be beneficial that company that came for grants to the last select meeting also said they do municipal business? Would it make sense to pay them for a professional projection from a finance point of view, or at least see what they had to offer?
To do what?
An actual projection. We really don't have anybody to do a professional financial projection. We grew
To help
so
spell out
fast,
the
you know,
details, I guess, of the.
and see if they could even ask the question, is that something they could do for the town? And if so, what would it cost?
Well, but
To get a consultant.
I would think that today, all of the department heads know what their individual departments cost.
No, but I'm talking about somebody who makes financial projections. We don't have anybody.
There was a study that was done, I can find it, that was, the DOR did it, maybe it was like a 5-year plan that showed where we were gonna be. I have it in a drawer somewhere, or on a file somewhere.
Well, I hope it said in the water.
I mean, I'm not just counting the
Didn't
value
work
of
too well.
everything in this room and other people, but there are people that do this for a living that would just focus directly on that.
Yes, Harry?
Thank you. I think the big problem is not the town. They can set a projection, but we have no way of knowing what the school is going to ask us for next year, the year after that, the year after that. So that financial projection, unless they are guaranteed to give us, is really out of the water at the end of this year. Because they can't, that's, I think, is one of the, I think we could, the town can do it, I think we can hire somebody to do it if we want, but there's that one piece that we can't project, is what Massachusetts doesn't let us know. We can't even get a line item budget to see what the budget is.
I mean, sorry, go.
But hopefully now with the new superintendent, we will have more transparency. Unfortunately, in their defense, they're stuck with the mess, cleaning up the mess that was left behind by the previous administration.
But in reality, the percentage that we pay towards education is pretty standard for a town. 60% is pretty normal, or around there. So I think we need to stop thinking about the school taking all our money and figure out what else we're doing here.
That brings me to a question, 60% of what? Is it 60% of the budget?
Yeah.
Does that count
Total
all the accessory, the balance, everything else that we pay that goes towards the school system? Because the buildings that we have to do, does that include everything or just their budget?
Just their budget.
It's not everything.
It could
It's
be
not everything.
65 or 70% as far as we know, when we factor in pensions and everything else we have to do. So, I mean, I understand what you're saying, but in the years I've looked at the budgets and I've gone back and looked at pensions that we have to support and all that stuff, the school doesn't pay the pensions, we do. So that 60% in my mind was a little misleading. Not incorrect, it just doesn't show the whole picture of our costs into an education system.
And they are, Wachusett, I'm not gonna say Baytown, Wachusett is in such dire straits right now because of what happened in the past. They have every intention of trying to get caught up and get back to where they think they should be, because they really do feel they're not doing justice for the kids. And I'm not gonna dispute that. Some stuff has happened that's caused some issues. But it's going to continue to cause us issues unless there's a way, to your point, that we can go back and someone, the infamous someone, sitting off in the corner, can go ahead and find a way to control that. And my opinion is the only way to control that is through the legislature. Somehow, I mean, I wonder about the revenue on this sheet today. Is this all of the revenue that we have? Is there more? Is there less? But there's got to be a way that we should be able to look at or have some kind of conversation with someone to say, if you're going to mandate that these things have to happen, you need to fund what these things have to happen. And it can't be going through the towns.
Yeah, and I'm not picking on the school system, I'm just saying, the budget they give us doesn't reflect the entire cost of our education system.
Totally right.
What other line items from this budget go to the education system then?
We're responsible for some of the buildings, for
Oh.
the school buildings, aren't
We're
we?
responsible for
Yeah.
all the buildings.
Up to a certain level,
They
a
should
certain
pay us a
amount, we're
maintenance lease
responsible.
agreement of $77,000 a year, but I don't think that covers what you do
We
for
don't
those
see it.
buildings. Yeah, it goes into the general fund, you know, as revenue.
So we get invoiced for expenses from their maintenance crews.
No, we have a lease,
monthly.
a maintenance lease agreement for the 3 schools
They
that
send
we
us the
plow.
money.
And we send
far
them
as-
the bill and they send us the money.
You'll see that on the,
$77,000.
you'll
the
see that
school-
on her amount that comes
Right.
in.
So if the schools weren't
Revenue,
there,
excuse me,
Joe
couldn't
wouldn't
get that
have
word
that
out.
work to do.
I mean, we have an agreement with the school, at least through the capital, and that says that up to, I think it's $35,000, they're responsible for. After that, it falls back to the town.
But that wouldn't affect the operating budget.
Well,
Yeah, but
line item.
it's still money that goes, I mean, in fairness, it's money that goes towards the school. So, Joe, that means part of your budget, your numbers here on this budget go towards
Plowing, cleaning.
the school-related items.
I'll be as candid as I can. In my time here, because we're already sweeping streets, or because we're already always plowing roads, the assumption was we would do the schools while we were there, as per the agreement. If you looked at the documents I sent as part of the balanced budget, we can no longer honor that agreement. What the town has done is taken the $75,000 and put it as revenue in the general fund. It doesn't go to Public Works, and nor is it reflected in any Public Works budget. It's just the assumption had been that we were doing that work already, and we would just continue to take care of the schools as part of that deal. One of the things we asked for was a creation of a revolving fund for those funds, so that we could make sure the schools were being properly taken care of. Because as a result of these proposed cuts, we can't even honor the agreement.
One thing I'd add about the revenue is we did not use any free cash towards this, towards to increase the revenues, which we kind of went off of what the school isn't using any of their E&D.
We're gonna be
You know what I mean?
using
That type of stuff, but-
$150,000. I called Gary today, that's our debt and financial policies. We will be using $150,000.
No, up to 100.
Yeah,
like
we're
we
going to
leave
be
what-
using 150.
No, our financial policies say we'll leave 150 in there, you know what I mean? So you can use up to about 200,000 to do this.
I would
So-
say 150, because we're going to have to look at increasing the revenue so that we could start looking at some of these things to
Right, I just wanted to point
I
that out
called Gary today to tell
the
him
rest of the committee, so
because
they knew that wasn't included in there.
We've always used that, and whether it be right, wrong, or indifferent, I don't think this is the year to just rip the Band-Aid off and say, we're not gonna use free cash, and we're just gonna decimate the
It's a
town.
starting area, you know what I mean, because it's really not, why take from your savings and throw it in there? So it was a starting point to not put it in there. It is available to put in there, so we'll probably, on the next go-round here, I mean, you had to see the picture with everything, with it not in there, you know what I mean? But this is how we're supposed to operate, without pulling it from savings, without pulling it from those type of things, so.
Yeah, but then we're gonna take 300,000 out of stabilization to pay for unemployment. I mean, stabilization
Right.
to me is, we've
That's
worked very
what
hard
we
to
needed
get
to get to.
stabilization to where it is. So I'd rather take 150 from free cash and try to, get stuff than take 300 out of stabilization, which
I think we're
affects.
still, with the balanced budget, to take 1.3 out of it, we're still gonna have to lay off people. We're still gonna have to,
I agree.
only have $30,000 in unemployment, so.
I agree. And that's, yeah.
So back to the
So then I guess the thing would be is if you guys, the select board, look at things, let us know, because of the impending interviews and whatnot next week, if you guys could maybe bring back within a week and a half, perhaps the number that we think that should be put in there, we could start looking at some legitimate numbers that you think to start off with in that department, and anything else that you folks in the select board think that you want to see. We've asked all the departments for their needs. I guess I know that attending the select board meetings, I know that you have some different things that you would like to see. So maybe you should bring some of those in so that we can maybe say in 2 years we add a grant writer, in 3 years we add this.
Well, so,
That would be towards the override, that's it.
okay.
It's just towards the override.
So, I'm talking about timing, because our next meeting, we either open the warrant or we don't. So are you looking to change the town meeting, or is this gonna be a second election for the override?
If we
What
don't
is-
make it for the 6th, we would have to have a second election. And I know that that's a cost of about $6,000.
So the question is, what do we need to get to the point where we can have it by the 6th? What do we need? Do we need a final number?
We need a final number we need a balanced budget, we need a final number for the override, which I don't think that's the hard number to get. The hard part is, and you folks can tell me, I'm not the only person on the finance committee, there's all of us. If you guys think that what we've gotten from Gary is good enough to bring forward and say, here's where we're at, then that's fine. I'll be sick. And Pete, you can be the chair.
I think we have to. I think it's the motivation to get it into people's heads that something has to be done.
I think you're scaring some parts of the population that it won't bring about what we think it's going to bring about.
Well, I don't know how we handle it all. We can't guarantee that an override's gonna fix the problem, but
Right.
you're frightening people, but at the same time, you may have poked the wrong bear. You're irritating people too.
Exactly.
And I don't know what you say to them unless you give them something in return. And the only way you can give them something in return is if you were assured this override is gonna work. And what I mean by that is if you knew the override was gonna work, they're gonna get trash pickup, or they're gonna get, you know what I mean, something for their money. Because a lot of people, even today, just came to me and said, you know what? I would vote for an override if I could afford it, and I can't afford it.
Right.
You know, other people are.
Sounds like they can't afford not to either, though.
Yeah, but you can't pull money out of thin air. I mean, you can't, if you really can't afford it, you can't afford it. It's easier for younger people who have income coming in, but if you have a fixed income, you can't just say, I can't afford not to. How are they gonna get it? But those are the people you're
I
asking.
think what they're saying is they don't want to pay it. I mean, we structurally are living at a level that we're unwilling to fund. I think we can fund it. We're living at that level. We expect these level of services.
Right.
And we I think what Karen is asking is this the only way to accomplish the balanced budget? We said to Gary last week, we need a balanced budget by next Wednesday so we can look at it. Are there other ways to balance the budget? I don't know. It sounds like you're skeptical that there are, but I mean, we don't have a whole lot of choice but to go forward with this as far as I can see.
When you just said they don't want to pay it, I'm talking about people on fixed incomes. You think they're just telling me they can't afford it, or they can all just don't want to pay it but can't afford it?
I suspect that I don't want to pay it. I know there are a lot of people that are saying they cannot pay it, but they can. I'm not saying there aren't people that can't,
There are a lot
but
that can't.
there,
A lot of SNAP.
but there are a lot
School
that
assistance, a lot of,
can and don't want to.
but there are a lot more than you would think that are in that age bracket that they can't even come and see. I'll show you. Seriously, I mean, I've had comments from outreach workers and directors in other towns, the town of Holden, that we all think is so wealthy, that nobody has food problems, insecurities, nobody has, rodent infestation. And the people that go out there and outreach for these people, yeah, they do. There are people that have nothing.
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
We have a lot of free lunch programs in this town. We have families that can't afford it, not just older people.
No, it's,
And yet,
and
we're kind of all fooling ourselves to think that if we really think, they just don't want to pay it.
I don't think any of us
That's tough.
sitting here think that it's going to be an easy sell, and it's not going to be easy on anybody. I just think that we're at that point now where we don't have a choice without completely decimating the town.
Well, I think maybe when we're looking at the override, that we look at more incentives for needier seniors, and you know what I mean?
Yep.
Put that into the
Needier
plan.
families in general.
Right, so that
Exactly.
there's some
elderly
support.
exemptions, there's deferred
Right,
tax
there's gotta be support,
options,
because there are
there's all
people
that
that really,
And I'm in full
Right.
agreement. And I think it's not just the elderly. I think there might be some younger families that might be having.
Right.
So there's all of that stuff that we have to look at. The problem that I see is we're sitting here, that we're now at pretty much, by the time we get around with everything, we're looking at the end of March. That gives us 1 month to get to the point where we've got the numbers set, we've selling it, we've having meetings, we're having all that. That's 4 weeks. You tell me, I might be negative Nelly, I'm thinking that's a lot in 4 weeks.
right, because you're gonna have to come up with specifics of, like we said, how the money's gonna be spent, and then we need to find a way of how you're going to pass that information on. So that's all gonna take, whether it be
Well,
tape, interviews or
we know how, unless you go to a higher number, of course, we know how the money, the 1.9 is going to be spent. We have all that information, and we didn't make it in a presentable fashion, but we had that information.
Well,
If we asked-
that's a no-brainer, but we're talking about doing more than that, above that. So if you're
So
gonna do
that we're
above
not
that,
having
you
to
need
go-
to show
yeah.
how you're
Right.
going to use that money.
Well, I think that this goes back to the problem of what Nancy just said, though. If we're gonna ask for more and we're already seeing aspects of people not being able to afford it, how do we even go forward and ask for more?
And I agree, but those
don't wanna
people that
do-
can't afford the 1.9, or they probably can't, they're not gonna afford the other one either, so they're probably not gonna support it either way.
But we can't go this year for 1.9 and next year go for, 500,000, and the next year, you just can't go every year. That's not gonna
So,
be helpful to
I say we
anyone.
go for what's needed, and then, like I say, we should consider programs and support
Right.
for people who are the most needy, that will need some kind of
And
tax break, cuts or
When are we
whatever.
gonna start thinking about what we can do in this town to attract business and to make our money work for us? Because we've gone beyond that point. That's what we need to do, or we're gonna be sitting here each and every year doing the same thing.
the good news and the bad news is if you had a business, would you want to come in where you have 2 roads in and both of them are 2-lane roads? So any kind of business.
Not a big business like that, right, which I've always said,
Right.
everybody wants a market basket.
We're not, so now we're looking for strip mall businesses and stuff like that. Now, hopefully that, we've got the manufacturing of the cannabis and we've got the dispensary. That's gonna bring in funds when that does get up and running. That's gonna help. That's
That many
3%.
years, that's all.
Huh?
So,
I get it, but listen, that's gonna, something's better than nothing.
But when cannabis businesses are already starting to shut down.
I get it, but for the little piece that we can get it's still gonna help.
But we have a lot that attracts people to town, so the more that we have people coming into town, the more attractive it is for businesses if they feel they're gonna have some kind of...
Sure, but we're not talking,
No, I know, we're not talking...
we're talking smaller businesses, yes. We're not, when people hear business, they think of, I want a Target, I want a Market Basket, that's, you know. Yes, sir. Yeah, Tamika, you gotta speak up, because I can't see behind my head.
So I just wanted to say that unfortunately, we can't count on that 3% revenue because there's been some legislative changes that are essentially going to eliminate that. So that's not something we're gonna have to move forward on cannabis.
Well, we don't know, because it hasn't passed yet.
Yeah, so that's
Right.
the works. My comment was that I think that we need to approach things differently than we have in the past because it hasn't worked in the past. And I really think that the way to reach the most people is not with an in-person public information session. I think we're going to reach the most people through social media. I think you're going to reach them on the website, email blasts, and I think that the best way to do that would be similar to what they did with the select board candidates a few years ago when we had COVID, and cable TV interviewed each one, and then they posted those interviews. I think that would be great to do with the department heads, interview them, post those videos, send them out there, because I just don't think that these departments are gonna get enough foot traffic in their buildings that it's gonna make any impact, and I don't think we're gonna get people at public information sessions, and I feel like we can't talk about it hypothetically anymore because we're down to the wire.
No, I think it's all of those things. It's all of those things. It's social media, like Joe does with his department. He's always putting out there, answering questions and getting all that, and that's how you get the word out there. And then it's maybe doing interviews with them, but it's everyone. That means Seth starts doing it, Becky starts doing it. Every department has to get it out there of the importance of
Right,
this.
that's important. I think we need to start like yesterday. I think we have to make a plan and say, this is what we're gonna do, this is what we're gonna schedule, and just make it happen, because we're running.
Where's all the time
Yes.
coming from? How much extra do you have?
Well, that's where we go back to timing. That's an awful lot to start.
Yeah, because
So Nancy,
very late.
you made a comment about people can't afford it and pushing back, and you know that you have information of what that is. Wouldn't it be good, just a thought, wouldn't it be good to be able to reach those segments of the population with a currently existing communication device like your newsletter? And just take the newsletter and just, I don't know how often you do it.
Once a month, so we're just about to send April's in by mid-March.
By mid-March. If we could get that information into that media and have it impact those people that might be the most resistant to dealing with an override, maybe that would be because we're looking to be able to try and influence folks.
I don't think she's saying resistant. She's trying to say that there are people who cannot afford it.
No, and I understand that, but can they not afford to be able to have the police available or the fire available?
Can't get blood from a stone is the other way to put it. I mean, they have, it's like us. We have the bucket of money that we can spend. They have their bucket of money and they're at their limit.
And I understand that. So unless we find a way for them to be able to expand their capabilities, then if I can't afford the taxes in this town, I think I might have to sell and move to some other place.
And you're absolutely right, except if you're 89 years old and you shuffle across the floor.
Right.
And you're overwhelmed and your kids don't want to help you. I've been through it. There are people in this room that have been through it.
Yeah.
It's not pretty, it's sad, and at the end of the day, it doesn't matter, because when that person's gone, when they're eventually gone, you have to clean up the mess.
Yeah. And
That's the reality.
well, that's all true, and I understand all of that. Twixt in between. I mean, at some point in time, there's got to be a solution to how this thing gets funded, and either it's going to be on the taxpayers, or it's going to be on the local taxpayers, or it's going to be on the state taxpayers.
And I agree with you, but at some point in time, we built so fast, people will have to realize you either cut the departments and not have the services, or you come to the realization that you are a town that is going to be supported solely by taxes, but you gotta stop the building first, or when you do the building, not stop it, but you gotta tell people, this is a town, we don't have any amenities, we don't have any extras, you're gonna pay it all in taxes. Because we've kind of brought people in that assume this is a nice little community town, it's cute, everything is free, it isn't that way anymore.
I mean, I think part of the draw to this town is that it's a residential town. People don't have to deal with commercial or industrial, and people need to understand that they're gonna have to pay for that, and if they can't afford it, then I'm sorry, you're right, you gotta go.
But,
a lot of them have been there their entire lives, they built the town.
You can't say they gotta go, you can't say
We need to
that.
provide opportunities.
Exactly.
Like the senior, the thing on the sign, that seniors helping seniors or for fuel assistance. We need to have programs, and we need to make it clear, and then other seniors who can afford it, if they see there's a program to help their friends that can't, they're gonna be more willing to support it.
So, is there a way, if we were to do an override, to get people who cannot afford it to not have to pay more? Is there a way, a
We're gonna
legal
have to
way?
build in incentives like tax breaks and things like that. That's the only way. You can't directly just tell them they don't have to pay as much.
They'd have to apply for elderly abatements or to defer.
But that's
taxes or
possible.
that-
Right.
But that's
yeah,
a
that's
doable thing.
definitely-
Right, so
yeah,
we
if
set up
they-
programs
if they
like that.
People who
qualify
can
for
pay
age or
more
income.
Can carry
And
this.
again, that's more communication.
Right, and so when
It's
that
very
happens,
limited.
1,000.
so when that kind of thing happens, and I walk down to the town hall and I apply for one of those, that means that I'm not paying, maybe not as much, maybe I'm not paying anything at all, but Karen's picking up my share, Lynn's picking up my share. So we're actually increasing the taxes on the other folks in the town when we give any kind of abatement back to any kind of citizen.
But I bet you that there's a large majority of people that would be happy to do that.
And that's fine, and I understand that.
Well, that's our society we live in.
Well, and
That's what we do.
And that's it. I mean, but see, that's part of the communications, I think.
Right. So we need to talk about, so if Becky
Right.
knows of ways to provide cuts to the taxpayers, or, maybe.
Assistance.
Assistance, right. Well, it is an abatement, or it's the same thing.
For the people
And then the
that can't
same with the
afford it, which
clerk's
we-
office, maybe certain things aren't gonna be charged to certain bit, or above certain, below certain
And we
incomes.
do.
or certain ages.
When people come into the tax office that are like, and we see people on our list that we know are elderly or don't, like, we actually go to the assessor's office, like, you need to send them this form, you need to, I've helped people fill it out before, that type of stuff, so that when they have issues, we help.
So we just theoretically educated each other on the fact that these people who theoretically can't afford it, even though the override happens, they're not actually going to be strapped for as much as the override is. So that $500 per tax person, it's not going to be $500 for the people who are
The most needy. Right, because we just need to know that it's
So
gonna have
educating
something out there for them.
So educating those people on that point, I think, is probably one of the most important things we can do in the next month.
Right, because like I said, not only the ones that need it, but the ones that care about the people that need it are going to be more comfortable with paying more, knowing that their neighbor is not going to be thrown out of their houses.
And it's going to be important to be able to assess the value of that. When we say that we pick a criteria, and that criteria says that anybody above a certain age and whatever, they would be abated by X number of dollars. So how many people are they? Where are they? What's their house value?
We don't make those decisions.
No, this is all mass general law.
I was like, it's all mass general law.
Yeah, but we should, I think his point is that we can come up with some sort of statistic to say, here, if you're in this group, here's how you'd be affected.
Right.
And I think that advertising that is probably the most important thing, to make sure that everyone understands how it's going to affect them. And
Right, I mean, basically, you could say anybody below a certain income bracket would be eligible
Pay
for
nothing more.
these specific. There are all these different types of benefits that we can set up. So and I think that's the important part of this too.
Now, hold on a second, Harry was up first.
Seth, you
Then-
got something?
Go ahead.
If you wore a tie, I'd be answering first.
I'll defer to you.
Okay, I think the goal is you want the senior population to age in their home.
Yes.
Because if they sell their home to a younger family, there's kids that are gonna be in this.
Not the whole
So
problem.
it's just gonna cascade the problem, so.
Right.
A small abatement that we put aside, I think would go a long way to help that population, but also limit the number.
And let us not lose sight of, like, Rutland Heights, we're gonna have a much larger aging
Yes.
population
Yes.
coming into town that we're counting on revenues from, that are not gonna be attracted to a town that does not support.
That doesn't have a council on
Right,
aging.
are you gonna come and buy into that facility if you know that the town doesn't support their seniors? I mean,
Thank you for saying that, Seth. And the other thing is, where are they gonna go? All these people who say, well, you gotta go, where are they going? They're not going to Holden, costs more to live there, they're not going to Paxton. They can't afford assisted living, it's
Well,
thousands.
and never mind that, but it's not our job to tell them. If
Well,
you want to
exactly.
stay in your
I'm
home,
just
you stay
saying,
in your
but
home.
it's not even an answer.
and a lot of
Where are
them
they gonna
built
go?
to this town. They have a right to be here. They should not be thrown out.
Right.
Go ahead, Harry.
That came in. and
You should
all
have
of a
never
sudden they're
given
like,
way for
"What?
Seth. See?
Why am I paying all these taxes? See what you get for being polite?
It's okay. I've been sitting here, and I don't come to a lot of finance committee, but this is important. I thought it was important I come to this one. And I've heard a lot of talk about if we do extra, we'll have extra in the future. If we have to, we'll have to cut. We're gonna go 2.5. But through this whole meeting, not one person has told me what the ramifications, just one thing of having that budget cut, what will people suffer from the DPW, what will people suffer from fire, and what the town administrator says is if we cut this, this is what you're gonna see gonna happen.
The current.
I haven't heard anything
The
about it.
current level service budget balanced has got some cuts in it that I don't wanna, I mean, we can tell you what's there now. We're closing the library and we're shutting down the Council on Aging.
I just want everybody who's gonna watch this to understand.
Now,
how
I'm not
this is.
saying that that's necessarily gonna be the one that's gonna hit the floor, but as handed to us this evening, that's what it took. We're at 1.5 people in DPW. We've cut the police lieutenant, we've cut overtime, and we cut,
No ambulance for 24 hours on Saturday.
that's what it was.
No what?
And
No ambulance,
ambulance
no
service
staffing.
Don't get sick.
Rolling, it'll be
And that's the
rolling,
one that
rolling
should be put
blackouts.
back.
Be rolling
on the
blackouts.
weekends,
On the weekends.
when we're all here.
Right.
I have a question about the police cuts, from what I saw, maybe I didn't understand them correctly, but it looked like, other than the holiday pay, they were all reverting back to 23, they weren't actual,
I
they
went
were
back to
cuts in.
22.
I know you did, but they were cuts in 24 wish lists, they were added line items, they were not current cutbacks. Am I correct in that?
Some of them were, but some of them, you're also referring to contractual obligations that had increases from 23 to 24, and then they cut, I think, 1 or 2 positions.
Yeah, they cut, I know they cut the police lieutenant.
They cut but that was an ad, so in fairness.
that was a
that's-
new one.
Those are new.
But there
Police
were
lieutenant-
either 1 or 2 officers that he was cutting from the existing, one officer from the existing.
Part-time.
3
And then
part-time.
But the ones that were new, do they count? They don't really count as official cuts, we're gonna have to make a.
Well, the only one that's new was the lieutenant. And then,
There was gonna be an additional officer.
okay, and then the full overtime budget was cut too, I believe.
What would you like us to say?
Overtime
Yeah,
was
they
cut.
wouldn't fill the overtime shifts, they had $50,000 cut in services and supplies. That's just police.
We're 4th of July, and the truck festival canceled, because if we can't do everything else, how do we afford police and fire for that?
This one had one.
And that's where you're gonna get the people to guide, that's when they need to take. Because they won't
It's there,
take it.
yeah.
But all
How you-
expenses for the 4th of July festival and all the other festivals, the food truck festivals, the concert, those are all sponsored. And paid
4th of
for.
July is coming?
Well, it comes out of the 4th of July committee.
But some people can be tested, they pay $50.
They do? All right, as long as
Yeah, they do.
Doesn't some money come from the town for the 4th of July?
We haven't funded that.
Yeah, we did that last year, the
No, we
300
haven't,
committee.
we haven't funded the 4th of July, and
That was 300.
300, okay, yeah.
we haven't funded it since I've been here, which is, I don't know, 11, 12 years. 30 years, whatever it was.
Could I hear from Joe too, what he sees as a potential problems if he has to deal with these cuts?
I'll do my best. Do you mind if I go ahead?
No, go right ahead, please.
So, Public Works has a regular Public Works has a pretty generic budget. You know, we buy concrete, we buy sand,
Ice.
salt, all that stuff. And we have several pieces of equipment. But what we don't have is a budget that says it costs X to sweep streets. We don't have a budget like that. We don't have a budget that says it costs so much to put mailboxes back. We don't have a budget like that. What I can tell you is the proposed cuts basically cut what field staff we have left in half. Okay, so by means of example, it takes 2 people to sweep all the roads in town, about a month to 2 months. Okay? If you've only got 1.5 people funded, how are you going to get the streets swept? Do you follow what I'm saying? There's just so few people. What it forces us to do is to focus on things like potholes, make sure roads are safe. If a tree falls in a road, we can cut it down. So
He will have no money to mow any lawns in town?
No, none of that.
That's all gone. So, concerts on the common, somebody better volunteer to mow the lawn, because it's not gonna be DPW.
We're not gonna not mow the lawns, because if we don't mow the lawns and they overgrow, realistically, who's buying those new condos? They're gonna come into the town?
We don't have the
But I'm
staff
just
to do
saying,
it.
we're not really, how are we gonna do it?
Okay, but here's the problem. When we were asked to make cuts,
No,
we
I know
focused
that.
on one
You did
simple
what
thing.
you're supposed to do, but in reality,
Under state law, roads have to remain passable to the maximum extent practicable. The one thing I have to do is make sure that 82 miles of road are safe for people to drive on. So if there's a pothole, a tree, anything, that gets done before the lawn gets cut. And if I only have 1.5 people funded annually, that stuff's gonna fall off the table.
Yeah, you're gonna run out of resources.
It's just gone.
how people are gonna come in and do things.
I hope I answered your
I'd like to make
question.
a recommendation that I think we are at a point in time where people who move to this town need to start participating in the town.
Oh, what a great idea.
Somebody has to say, okay, the 4 of us, we'll mow that for the concert. Or we'll do this. Now, it's probably pie in the sky, but you know what? If you move to this town, you want a bedroom community, you want a community that's friendly, you want people to have your kids, well, I think everybody needs to start pitching in somehow. I don't care.
So here's the number for cutting lawns. When I first came here 4 years ago, we put a person on a lawn truck, a lawn tractor every single day from mid-April to mid-November. Somebody goes out every single day and cuts lawns from roughly mid-April to mid-November. In the last 2 years, I've had so many cuts, that's become really, really difficult. But we'll caution you on this though. Believe it or not, we actually got some complaints from the union about volunteers cutting lawns.
No kidding.
Seriously, you took their work.
Taking work.
You took their work and I'm not kidding.
So how would you handle that?
It would end up in a, truth be told, if the union pushed hard enough, it would go to arbitration and it would be settled by an arbitrator.
So John, what kind of liability you pick up if I walked down to your department and said, you know that big tractor that you do
I'm not
this
gonna
kind of...
let you do that.
And I know that you're not.
What if I show up one day and start mowing?
But if you get volunteers, I can see if you mowed the lawn, you could.
There won't be any police to arrest
The
you.
volunteer outside of DPW.
But why does it have to get to that point?
Yeah,
You know, it
agreed.
shouldn't, I'm just saying.
Why does it have to get to that? The other thing is, we take no funds in from any of the organized sports. Anybody who uses the common doesn't pay us anything.
Well, that's the other stuff we have to do.
We don't collect any fees for any of those things.
4th of July, you can make money on a bus system, we need to do all that stuff. That's what I mean about making money.
But do you see,
Yeah.
my point to answer Harry's question was, the things like, the pretty stuff like cleaning cutting lawns, picking up trash cans on Monday morning after people play ball, that's the stuff that'll fall off the table. Fixing street signs. We'll fix a stop sign because it's safety, but somebody's street sign, like Sassawana or Brittenell, it'll wait for months.
But that's what I'm saying is.
Because my point is, that's the stuff that's gonna fall off the table as a result of the cuts.
deteriorated.
Right, we'll look like the center of Sterling where the inn is, and no one's buying the Rutland Heights property, that's my point.
But I hope I answered your question.
You did, thank you, because
The other
in
thing,
my opinion, the town now has a choice.
there is one other caveat I want to mention. So we did ask initially when we and it wasn't a wish list. We kicked snow and ice up, I want to say 30,000 from a year ago. And that was as a result of, when we closed out the year last year, we finished the year 225,000 in the hole. Salt has gone up, I want to say 26% and 18% respectively over the last 2 years. So we put snow and ice back at the 23 level because by law, you have to at a minimum fund it where you did the year previous to be able to deficit spend. But the deficit spend is not a save-all, because come next spring, you're gonna have to scramble to put that money back. It's just not realistic. So some other stuff we did talk about when we looked at the budget cuts, which we slammed together from Monday into Tuesday, is do we drop any services off for snow and ice? Do we instead wait till there's 2.5 inches on the ground before we plow? Do we cut back on how much we solve? Do we have to save on some of those costs? Because the reality it is, the operating cost for fuel, salt, trucks keeps going up.
Thank you.
Oh, Tom has.
Go ahead, Tom.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I have become pretty unpopular with a few people in town because I brought up the idea of putting a lot of the expenses for these fields back on these leagues.
Yep.
And anybody that knows me, I'm 100% pro rec. I think it should be grown. But I think we would I think it would make sense to bid out some of these fields, all these ball fields we have. And between that and the porta potties, put the fees back on the leagues. I mean, it's
Putting the fees of the sports teams back onto the leagues that are using them.
Right.
In essence.
So would you say that those fees would go to the town?
Well, I mean,
Or go to recreation, and recreation would take care of maintaining them?
Right, recreation would do it, but then recreation, of course, would charge Little League, soccer, or whoever's utilizing the field, which is what a lot of other towns are doing. I'm the football director for Wachusett youth football, and we pay pretty substantial fees to Sterling to use their fields. So, we'll get the lawns mowed, the porta potties up there for people to use, but the fee has to go on the leagues,
So if the fees for the field go to recreation, who's going to be responsible for maintaining the field? Recreation?
Right, we hire an outside private contractor. We bid it out, put it out to bid, and see what they charge us for it. At the beginning of the season, before the fields are being used, we put that in the contract in regards to utilizing the fields, whether it be Memorial or Naquan or Central Tree or whatever. This is the cost to use the field.
Okay.
One thing before we conclude tonight, we need to decide, because come our next meeting, we're gonna either open the warrant or not. So I just want to know.
Don't worry, I haven't lost track of it,
Right.
because I know you said that. Although it's already been posted that the town meeting and everything has already been posted. There was something that was posted on the website the other day. It came up saying,
Yep, it's the proposed calendar.
It's proposed, but it's not
Okay.
set, so
Okay.
we do not have to set anything until Monday. Not this Monday, the
Right.
following
Right.
Monday. But we do either open the warrant if we need to do it, if we're going to continue with that schedule.
right,
If not, then that's fine. But yeah, so we have time, but till the 20th.
right. So my question is, Finance Committee, what do you think? Will we be able to make the May 6th deadline?
Well, so from my perspective, it depends upon what the work is. It's really pretty simple if we come up with a difference. If we find out what our deficit is and what that percentage, what that is as a percentage of the total, and just be able to say, apply it back. Or give each one of the department heads that goal, that their budget has to be reduced by X amount of dollars, and go do it. Or we could sit in a room like we had done before, that drove us all crazy, where we went down and we said, well, we'll just take this out, and then we went into an argument for a half hour.
I mean, that was the old system where we would just tell the departments, you're gonna cut so much, and you cut wherever you have to, and it's just gonna be a number.
My only thing is, and I haven't heard a resolving woohoo from the Finance Committee. Are we happy with the balanced budget with the cuts?
No.
Are we happy with bringing that to the floor? Yes, no, maybe so.
I don't think anyone's happy, but I personally don't think we have a choice.
Okay.
Well, and I'm not happy at all, and I don't want to do it.
So my thing would be, is with the balanced budget with the cuts, are we going to bring this to the floor, or are we going to revisit it? All in favor of going with this form, please raise your hand in the Finance Committee.
We can certainly tweak it, but
still not,
Karen,
Yeah,
I
well, you
need to
didn't get
get
it-
you
no,
two more
you-
pieces of important information that
No.
I did not get today.
That's
And that
fine.
is what happens to Meals on Wheels.
Yep.
And what happens with an obligation of a state-funded, that formula grant is state-funded. We are one of 350 Mass Councils on Aging in the state. We support,
Yep.
okay, Elder Services, which is in Worcester County. And that support's gonna go away, and I don't know how that's gonna, I don't know, if you get it, at Meals on Wheels, Dick Price worked many, many years ago to get it into the town. If you lose it, I don't know if you get it back. We'll certainly lose the site manager, and I don't know that you can they'll put the burden on another site like Holden, because somebody still has to pay some of those bills. So I have to find that out, I don't know what happens.
So the reason I didn't put up my hand
Yep.
to vote is because I don't think I personally have enough information to make that decision right at this point. We asked Gary to give us a balanced budget by today. I would certainly need to want to ask Gary, and I think he would probably have to get more information from department heads, but is there another way to accomplish this? I've kind of heard Alex say he doesn't think there is. I don't know.
The only other way you have, honestly, is actually that paperwork that I sent. That's what we have available for funds at this point. And the only way to open up the two departments that really shouldn't be closed in the first place is to cut from the others.
Correct,
And
okay.
reduce your supplies and services elsewhere.
So the question is, you mind if
hold on one second, he had his hand in front. I'm sorry, I don't know your name.
I am Michael Kapuzicki, I'm a resident, 6 Skyline Drive.
Thank you.
Quick question, Gary, on the balance budget where you're cutting the 2 programs, what did you budget for empty buildings?
Well, we had to take some out of the budget for what it cost to keep those buildings. So we had to also knock off the electricity costs, the water costs, the utility costs.
But there are still costs involved in having a building on premises.
Yes.
So what did you budget for
I
that?
have not.
Oh, but that's the same with all departments. Joe's got 1.5 persons. That's what he's going to be. He can't do the job with that.
No, but if the way this is, we shut down Council on Aging in this library, you shut those 2 things down, where there are still
There's
costs to
still costs,
keeping this building. We cannot, we can drain all the pipes and put antifreeze in it, but there's still gonna be some costs.
Right.
So, and the same with the Council on Aging. It's not just that you just shut the door, lock it, and say closed and walk away. There's costs.
And if it's gonna cost more on unemployment and insurance and to keep the building up, then does it make sense to take a vulnerable population and take away the only advocacy services?
So what you're saying is right. It's just, how do we get to that point where we find the money to pay for the stuff that you're talking about?
And I know, Becky, you're saying we need an override, and you're right. But if we don't get it, is that the department, is that the service you wanna cut?
Well, I mean, it's not a matter of the service you want to cut, it's what has to be cut.
any of it.
All of that stuff, we can't spend money we don't get. We know that, everybody knows that. Your checking account is not gonna allow you to spend money you don't got. And so if we're at a point where we don't have the money, we're gonna have to start spending someplace.
There is also the.
Where do you do it? 'Cause I want the ambulance before
Hold
I
on,
want
there's the unpopular way of, we can affect the school's extra amount. We can say, this is what we can do, because there's 2 forms of what Wachusett is. The minimum local contribution, and then I forget what they call it, something, operational assessment, is that what they call it, operational assessment?
And there's towns that aren't necessarily agreeing to pay for theirs either.
Right, so what I'm saying is, we could affect that as well. That also is a hard sell, but it is something that we are allowed to do.
So we remember the time that we were out on the parking lot at the school when we were trying to do that. And we were shouted down for it, so it's tough.
I have a question. About that point, I think it's like 2.5% for the overage. Where does that put the budget? Because I don't know, it might make it, I don't know. For the,
We only have one, on this budget, we only have one thing, and I haven't committed to
One number,
memory.
yeah.
We haven't committed to memory, the minimum local and the.
Right, I just
overage.
know that the minimum local was like 7 something, and then the
Yeah.
rest, but anyway, I just,
Right.
how that would affect the total budget, I think that there would still be a shortfall, but maybe not.
Well, there would be, but therefore, if we affected that, there would be some to give back to some departments, so that therefore, we just don't write a blank check to the schools and just accept their numbers every year. We do affect all departments.
Right, no, and
Not just,
and I understand where that's going, and that would also, just for my own information, require at least one other town to do something similar or fail the budget entirely, right? Because if the school budget passes in the other 4 towns, no matter what Rutland does, even if we piecemeal it out, then we're still on the hook for our total assessment, correct? Okay.
And that's why we always have 3 budgets.
Right.
minimum, if not more.
This is a little bit of a sidetrack question, but it was going back to the conversation about the calendar. If we were to move town meeting, is the election day is set though, correct? So then we would potentially be having an election for an override without any conversation as to using town meeting as an opportunity to
You
either
would have a second election.
Right, and yeah, your inputs is about $6,000.
Right, I was gonna say, but then it's the additional cost and getting people out then.
And if that's what has to be done, and then you look at, I mean, we don't want to use all the ARPA funds for, that would be a one-time expense. It would be a reoccurring expense. We had to go somewhere for a second election for something like that.
Right,
I suppose we could
I just am
consider it.
trying to understand, like, in my head, what, like, how it,
It would be a second election because it wouldn't be smart to do it without having the town meeting to
Right.
have, that's where you get the captive audience
Right.
to see the limits of the budget. Right.
and then that election would still have to be by the end of the fiscal year, or could it go in, do we have until September or something to have that election to fully fund?
No, because
Or-
if we don't set, well, it would be the 1/12 budget, and we don't want to do
Right,
that.
right, so it would have to be, the election would have to be by the end of, so we'd be buying ourselves a month and a half or so, is that, if we were to delay?
I don't think any of us on Finance Committee want to be going into the month of June. I think we're looking at maybe a few weeks extension, maybe a week or.
Well, honestly, right now, it seems like the only thing that we really need the extension for, understand that you want to look at the budget further, but really the extension is to get people knowledgeable enough to vote for an override. That really is the bottom line of what we're looking to extend
You
for.
could start it now, you know, there's no reason why
We should have
not.
started a month ago.
We should have started a year ago. We sat here and did this every single year. And the department's heads, and I'm sorry I'm angry, but I am angry.
Nope,
I've
yeah.
said it at every meeting, this conversation needs to start a long time ago. And this is lack of planning, absolute lack of planning on everyone's part. And we just sit here and we do the same thing.
We submit budgets in August.
I will say that if you go back to the town hall meetings, maybe 2 years ago, you're gonna see that I stood up and recommended we do 2.5. Because you can't have it all. So you either have to have a choice, you either cut or pass on 2.5. I've tried to pitch that at the town hall, at the meetings.
Well, but if I remember correctly, the town meetings, I think they agree with the budgets, which says that we're going to go for an override, but it goes to the election, and the election is killing. So it's great to go to the town meeting and feel good about, well, everybody's agreed and we're all walking out, but then as soon as you put it in front of a person in a ballot booth that's there by themselves and nobody else knows what's going on, they're going to vote the way they feel they have to, and if they can't afford it, they're going to say, no way.
Well, they also need to know what they're getting, what they're spending money for. That's
right.
Because they've been burnt, like Karen said. We've done overrides for departments and it's gone to the school, and they want to know if they're going to actually pay more money, where it's going to go, and are they actually going to get something additional? And that's the biggest piece of this, is what they're going to get for this additional money.
And how is there, I mean, it's not a matter of how, is there a way that we can assure that voter that they will not see a dollar of the money that they voted as an override go to the schools next year? No, of course not.
So they won't trust what you're telling them?
Yeah.
Well, no, that's not true. They'll trust, but we have to be very upfront that for years and years and years, we've held off on doing a 2.5 override. We have used bubble gum and duct tape to keep this town afloat. Well, the bubble gum's letting go and the duct tape's lost its stickiness, so now we're stuck. We need to do something else. I mean, we're in trouble. I mean, we've been, I know I've been saying this for years. It's even you, Linda, when you sat on here. We know that we're in trouble. And every year we cut and cut and cut, and we've cut past the point of no return.
Does anyone think they have an idea on who would be most against a 2.5 or a 2.5 override? What population, what groups, what?
The seniors.
Seniors.
So those people that can't afford it, right?
And other people that can't afford it. There are
Right,
people,
yeah.
young children that.
So if we can get the advertisement out there that tells them that it's not going to cost them as much money as we are saying it's going to cost everyone.
But we have to let them know that there are programs available that they have to come and apply for.
Right.
This isn't something that we can just say, it's not gonna
No,
cost
I
you as much.
get it.
You have to apply for it. You have to do.
Proactive.
I have a thought, a very strategically planned 8.5 by 11 postcard, full color, and if it's strategically planned right, can be mailed out. There's a company that does it, the postmaster told me this, or something else, at about 22 cents a household. Has to go to every household. And that's the way to get it to everybody. When people don't have social media, gets mailed directly to them if you plan it well.
That's the other thing, a lot of seniors.
Might be.
But we can't use taxpayer dollars to do that. That's where the issue is. We cannot use
So you
taxpayer
have all,
dollars.
you have the fire
got
department
ARPA.
has friends.
Yeah, one time.
COE has friends, the library has friends, any of those.
And I'm in full agreement, but I just know we cannot use general fund funds.
Can we use ARPA to do that?
No.
No?
But you're right, you might get all those friends groups, there are several.
Get all the
Yeah.
friends together and then pitch in and do a part of it and fund it.
No, I agree. It's just important to state that
Right.
we can't use, I mean, it's, we're not as.
That's like lobbying your own
Right.
funds.
Yeah.
You can't do that. Now, so where did we go? Are we moving the town meeting or are we going?
I can't get anybody to.
I mean, I'm back, I just looked at, between library and council on aging, we're roughly $400,000 is the savings there. So
That's
if,
after the unemployment and the other stuff is put back.
no,
The
that's,
unemployment's not there.
Not even in
The
the-
unemployment's
not even built
300.
into
so
the-
that's just purely closing them, that's the savings, which is, doesn't even really accomplish that. But if we don't, if we did not close either one of them, we've got to find other places to cut $400,000. So if Seth were still here, I would ask Seth and Gary and Joe, because,
They can't cut anymore.
and if the answer is no, that you guys cannot absorb more of that, then I'd say we don't have a whole lot of choice. We've got to move forward, and why push it off? We've got X amount of time. What is 2 more weeks going to do for us to market it? I don't think it's going to.
The big three, because I'm one of the big three, is basically cut $900,000 out of that budget.
And
you heard the-
I don't think there's room for more, is there?
You heard the chief, they're gonna cut back on an ambulance.
Yeah.
On, for 24 hours, they're gonna cut patrols. If anything I mean, we're so short now. I mean, think about it. I got 1.5 people taking care of the roads. There's nothing left.
If we cut down on ambulances, does another town cover us?
So I would then be pretty well convinced that we cannot rework this substantially. Why put off the meeting would be.
I'm thinking that there's some other cuts to make, that maybe we don't open it full-time on either one of them. Maybe restore them 100%, but at least give the basics.
You've got 150 in free cash that gets added into that too.
Right, exactly. So there's 150 that's not in the revenues right now, that should be.
Didn't you say 62 as well was the bottom line after this? So really it's
Source of the
200.
$400,000 that belongs to Gary. I don't think so.
There isn't another source for 400. We're not gonna be able to restore them 100%, but I think we can restore them to something. Give some services.
Do we need 2, 3, 4 extra weeks to do that?
No.
I would think not.
Okay. You guys tell
would
me.
be my thought.
You guys tell me, but I'm saying, we're meeting once a week.
It is postponing, just, it's.
Is it also
avoiding the
just for
inevitable.
us to make sure that we have enough time to sell this appropriately and start doing what we want to do and make sure that we have all the numbers? Because I think that we won't have the numbers from some of the things that the select board wants until next week, so.
Well, we gotta get a final number, some. We need to put a stake in the ground to say that whatever we have by next Tuesday is going to be the number. That's what we're going with. And we won't entertain anything more than that.
Yep.
And then we go from there.
I just,
Did the school committee vote another number, or what are they?
They're voting right now.
they're not entertaining a different number, are they?
I don't have any of the documentation of what they're voting on. The executive session was just about how contract negotiations were factored into the budget. That was what my executive session that I was over there for. They're voting on the budget right now. I don't see, as of Monday night, the numbers hadn't increased. They had stayed the same or, yeah. As of Monday night, after the public.
Well, I gotta imagine they realize the confidence of the communities are pretty low right now in them, so I can't imagine they're gonna come to us and try to get more money when everybody feels that they've been robbed as it is.
And
So-
we can't be the only ones in this situation. We
Right,
can't
oh
be.
no, they saw most of the towns,
Yeah.
they weren't
It seemed
supportive.
like even Holden said, we can't afford this.
Right.
Yeah, but they won't stand behind you.
Yeah.
And every town talked about infrastructure, every one of the towns within the district, the infrastructure is horrid.
Yeah.
But
We're
it's the
better
same, but
than
it's the same
most.
thing. 7 people or the finance committee and select board are all 100% for it. It's the taxpayers that make the decisions, and that's just the way it is. And whether we like it or not, we have to educate them the best we can to understand what that means.
And the only thing that we need to do is give them choices. Choice is fully funded budget of $80 billion. Or you're gonna lose a lot of services and this is what you can afford.
The other
There you
thing,
go.
like, excuse me, I didn't mean to interrupt, but the other thing, that when you're talking about cutting any of the other budgets to getting this money, like Karen said, we don't have to accept the school number either.
Right.
And the other towns aren't necessarily going to accept the school number either. So there may be, that's why we had so many versions of the budget. If we cut the school budget down this amount,
That can help
can
restore
this restore some of these other
pieces.
areas?
Maybe not 100%, but pieces.
Well, in
Again,
school-
it's just like making
But
a
you
quilt.
can't count on it because you need the 2
Yeah.
towns, so you gotta have every kind of scenario.
Yeah.
If the override doesn't pass, if the school budget passes, I mean, it's crazy. You're doing 5 budgets by the time you're done.
Yep.
But that's
And
the way
there
we've
was-
always done it.
And there was that one year, we were $1,500 off, and Margaret took the cut herself to make the balanced budget. So it always comes right down.
So did these two people.
Yeah, these 2 people did too. in
No,
their
they
petition.
took the cut
Right,
that went, Margaret took an additional 1,500.
right. Everybody that took a cut did not live in town.
Right.
Becky, do you happen to have off the top of your head? Just so
You
people
guys did
listening,
keep
I know
your
it's
administrative.
online and you can put numbers in, but a $500,000 house, what they would pay with if we just, well, I don't know what figure you use.
I have a $350,000 house is the average house with a, let's see, $2 million override. It was $1.47 on the tax rate. It's about $500.
A year.
A year.
Right, a year. So if we did a $3 million override on a $350,000 house, it would be $770 a year added onto their taxes.
So I would ask one thing. Once we make the decision to do an override, we put it out there with the tax calculator so that I can type in that I have a $514,383,000 home and I can see what it's going to affect
It's
me.
already ready to go.
Right, exactly. That's all I'm going to ask is, and that stays to be the first thing on, the dog licenses don't come in front of it, the concerts on the common, that stays there until after the election. Because it can't move down, no one looks to the second page.
No.
That has to stay there so people can see it.
I would also think that a quick, that one liner of that average be up there as well, so that the
Yep.
people who aren't savvy or don't want to use a calculator or aren't able to for whatever reason, the one thing they see is 350,000 average would be $500 a year.
Exactly.
And then they say, oh, my house is only worth 200,000, so it's only going to cost me whatever.
I did have another question that I thought of. When will the decision be made on if we're doing an override and the final amount?
Make it right now.
The decision to do an override, I think, is pretty well set.
Right.
It's
Okay.
the amount.
It's the amount.
Are you going to do that tonight, you think?
I already said, I would be willing to go $3 million.
Yeah, but we have to
But
put
we also
specific
said-
reasons.
We need to.
We can't just say, we can't do the Ron way of saying 500,000 and just move forward. We need to have a reason, we need to have a reason why. So that means we have to say, we have justification for what we've got justification for. And then we have to say, okay, but we think realistically in the next couple of years, this is what it's going to be for the town administrator. So you guys have to come back with some of the things that you've seen, what the cost is for a grant writer, those kinds of things, and kind of give us some of those, because then we can add those in as a potential to add, and here's what we'll be adding within the next 3 years.
That needs to happen like tomorrow.
It won't be less than 1.9.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Would,
That'd be well more.
so then that wouldn't impact my thinking about.
The truth of the matter is we only have a
Changing the
month to
date.
go, really. So if we up this number at all, that's just another week that we're not going to be able
Well,
to.
we need to come up with a number and keep the number too. We can't.
Right.
What did Anita say the deadline is to get it on the ballot? Is it 6th or something like that? Too?
April 5th is
Fifth?
the last day to get it on the ballot.
All right.
Yes, Harry?
Quick question. On the stabilization funds, every year we put a certain percentage into those.
Yes.
Is that mandatory and is that factored in already?
We set it as policy.
That comes
comes from
in
free
free
cash
cash in the fall.
Okay.
It's nothing in the budget.
Okay.
Yeah. And it is policy because it's the smart thing to do with free cash. Otherwise, we'd be spending it like drunken
So
sailors.
we have it in writing that we will do
Right.
that.
We'd be spending it like drunken sailors, so we're gonna put it away. Yes.
One last question. If, looking at the override, if you present it as $1.47 per thousand, you can present it at, that's gonna be for everybody? Or you're gonna present it that, there's gonna be certain, maybe elderly exemptions in there? And then if you do that, then that means that everybody else who's not in the elderly exemption is gonna end up paying more. So isn't that gonna be, and they're gonna be looking at it going, I'm gonna pay more if I go ahead and approve this override as opposed to.
No, it'll go on everybody's tax rate, but then the people that are eligible for an exemption or wants to do deferred taxes and that type of stuff will need to apply for it, apply for exemptions for a certain amount of money, which is factored into the revenue, the abatements, the allowance for abatements and exemptions.
So
is
that
factored
doesn't
in.
affect everybody else then, who still doesn't get the deferrals?
Right.
Well, everybody will pay that same amount, but we will have programs available for the most needy. It's all factored into that
Right.
override. But
And
the rate per thousand will be the same across the board regardless.
And we can put together a one-page sheet that says this is who is eligible for an
Right, they have-
elderly exemption or
Right, and
so on
they
and
have
so forth.
like HUD set income guidelines that we can use
Correct.
for eligibility.
So I think it'd be good to know the scope of that. What are we talking about? 40 people, 400 people,
4,000
It's-
people.
4,000 people.
Some
Might be
of it's
100.
income eligibility, so
She's not.
I don't know. You don't know that,
No. She's not gonna know
Okay.
what everybody makes.
Yeah.
She's all knowing, but only in certain
Well,
things.
it's gonna be just like Nancy with the fuel assistance and stuff. They collect the money and the most needy get it and you go through it and when it's gone, it's gone.
Yeah.
But hopefully you're hitting the most needy that really cannot survive without it.
And people need to know that they can come and apply for that. There's a lot of seniors out there that just say, I can't afford this. I'm like, okay, but they don't come in. There's a lot of people that they fell behind in their taxes and I was like, have you applied for an abatement? Did you know that? And they're like, oh, no, I didn't. Like, come in and apply for it. Come find out the programs that are out there.
I mean, is there assistance?
Don't be afraid to walk into the town hall.
Well,
Yeah.
is there some way for people who can't come in? Is there
Yeah.
options? Is there help? Is there things like that I think that?
Well, that's a lot of what the Council on Aging
That's what they do.
does.
They aren't gonna be there to
Those are the services they
The
provide.
change we just made in the assessor's office, which I think is gonna help a lot, and you have a full-time assessor there that is gonna be able to go and
So we need
be
to
able to
advertise
reach out.
that as well, to say if you
Exactly.
need help, if you can't
We're
do
trying to
this,
stabilize
here's where
our
to go.
offices because we've got a lot.
That's a lot to advertise. I mean,
Yeah.
to Karen's point, to advertise all this in a month is a tall
But it has
task.
to be succinct.
Right, even if you do
Can't
those
put too
cards,
much
you could
stuff
even
out
say
there.
that assistance will be available to,
Right.
lower income residents. So some kind of bullet will need to be on there just so that people realize there are programs that will be available, so.
I think it's doable, but it's a tall task. But I think we're at the point now where, Harry said it, we're at a crossroads in the town where we have to do this. And we have to make sure that those that can't get help where they need it, and that we do what we have to do.
And people have to understand how bad it is.
And Tamika's right, by putting out a budget that's showing huge cuts, daunting things, that's hopefully gonna be freaking motivation to get those people out there. I hope to God.
disagree with that. I think if you close down those two, you are scaring the wrong population, and that's just going to put them off.
Plus, you're putting it on the town floor at night with limited people.
Right, well, it's not limited on that day, but I look at it as, I think we have to revisit some of the different things, because I can't say that putting this out and saying, this is what we think is gonna happen if it's a balanced budget, I think that's sending the wrong message, and I think you're going to alienate people and they're gonna get upset. Right, wrong, or indifferent, I think they're gonna get upset. And we need this, I mean, people are hitting inflation. People have young children, they need to come in here to get books. We need this meeting space. We have cable. Where's cable gonna go when the library closes? Because they're not gonna be allowed in. So there's all those questions, never mind all the questions we have from Council on Aging. We've been lucky enough.
How are you gonna have voting if you close the library down?
We've been lucky enough, because of our librarian, to get waivers and all that kind of stuff to help us keep lower hours and all that kind of stuff. We close this library, understand, no one in the town of Rutland will be able to borrow a book from any library within the state of Massachusetts. Doesn't seem like a big deal until it's your kid that needs something for a school project, and you have to drive them to Jamaica Plain because that's the only place where the book is. Because you can't do interdepartment, you can't do interlibrary borrowing, all that kind of stuff.
So you don't think that people getting as angry as you are right now about the idea that would motivate them to make a decision about making the override?
Well, she's talking about a parent who's bringing
I
kids
get
someplace.
it, but that passion you just put into that statement you just said should motivate people.
But it's not, she's not the demographic. She's not the demographic that's impacted. It's the elderly that's impacted.
I just look at it and go, I think we have to look at, to keep bare bones in those two departments, and I think there are some other places that we can try to make some different iterations of the budget. If everyone's happy with it and they want to put it out on the floor and stand up behind it, that's fine. I will go on record stating, I am not.
I make one really fearful thing to me is that people will look at that if you have bare bone minimum thing and they'll say that's good enough, we don't need the override, and everyone's going to vote against it. And they're going to say that that's fine. I think that you're setting a precedence to say, like, this bare bones town that we're now going to be running is adequate and good enough.
Yeah, but you got to give them an option now.
We've been doing that for years in DPW.
You got to give them an option. You got to be able to say, this is what it's going to cost to keep it alive, or this is what it's going to cost if we cut it back. Now, if we cut it out completely, that's draconian, probably scaring people. But if we cut it back a little bit, it's still going to have the same impact. People are going to see it that way.
I don't know if I agree with that.
So there will be a discussion at the town meeting.
Yeah.
Yes,
I hope it's not
I
a
know, I
discussion.
see, but I have to wait for the discussion to stop here first. Go ahead, Tina.
I fear with almost, I don't know what the right word is, but catering our cuts to certain populations, no matter what we do, some population is going to be affected and is going to be upset. So again, I ask the question, who's going to rework the budget to make these cuts? Is that our office? Is that the FinCom? I mean, I just feel like we talk about we want to put it in different places, but who's going to make those changes so we know where we're going to go from here?
It would be us.
Yeah, that's good.
With Gary at our meetings, going through and having the discussions. You don't get away from it, but you get stuck with us.
Right. I mean, in reality.
You don't get to sit at home eating your dinner on Zoom.
In reality, if you look at it in whole, 150,000 free cash, 62,000 in what the bottom line of the balanced budget is. You cut the school budget back by 200,000. You have the council on aging and the library back, but you still have all the cuts in all the other departments.
Right.
And how do you get that? I mean, and we just made
The balanced budget right now does not include the $300,000.
Well, it's coming from the stabilization.
That's coming from stabilization. And now, what's going to happen when that gets voted down on the town floor?
Right.
Because I can tell you that's another hard sell. Because we've worked really hard to get our stabilization up. It's a rainy day fund. It's not supposed to be.
This is a rainy day. It's raining.
But-
It's thunderstorm.
It's still,
Yeah. Tornado out there.
it's still operational. Operational
But
is
how do you
supposed to
justify
be.
opening the library and then saying that you're not gonna have an ambulance service, the police might not be able to come help you?
I agree.
You're gonna
But you
get
can
people
go
are
to the
gonna say, I'd rather
Don't
see the
get
library
hurt.
close.
Yeah.
Oh, we're not gonna
So-
plow your street.
Well, everybody's going to.
Yeah.
That's already done.
Until the
That's
next
already
day.
done. That's already done. I mean,
Come on. So I'm not going anywhere. What do I care?
Done.
I'm not saying we have to put everything back to full. I don't think we're ever going to get the library up to where they want to be, and I don't think we're going to get the council on aging. But I think we need to think about having.
Take out the TA.
If I were Kerry and I knew my library was on the chopping block, I would get everybody I know to that town meeting to vote for an override. It's not just.
And spread the
up to
word.
us.
Spread the word.
It's up to the town.
Yeah. But it's not that, I mean, like we said, it'll happen at town meeting, no problem, but then it's getting it passed at the ballot. So
There you go.
they're gonna pass it everything will pass at town meeting. There's, I mean, the past number of years, there's been there's been discussions and some fights, but not massive fights at town meeting. But it goes to the ballot and it's no, and then it's all those cuts because.
So are we also?
Townspeople to talk about it, get you there out to vote.
Are we also prepared for saying, here's our balanced budget, and these two departments are gonna close, we have a talented librarian that can find another job, and then the override passes and we don't have a librarian?
On the override, if it passes and we get our 3 million, are there still cuts in place?
No.
Okay, that we need to make certain.
That was my question, that if we're gonna do an override, it needs to be, it's the needs budget, which is what.
Leah,
Gary
could you
said.
just shut that door just a little bit, please? Because they're kind of loud.
Can I ask if everybody in this room understands, as far as council on aging, forget about me, because I don't work there. Does everybody understand that there's two sides to this? The council on aging is the advocacy research side. And I don't want people in this room to think that, you know what, it's not a necessary place to be open because people, even though exercise and all that is important, you're talking about a true advocacy side that is not a nice to have, it's a need to have.
If you've got a parent and you don't live in the area, you can call on Nancy and her group and they will teach you different places to go and help like that. I know I just recommended to one of the guys that I work with to go to his council on aging because he's signing up for Medicare for the first time and he needed some assistance. That's stuff that helps.
And I don't know that you can totally close it. Maybe you just take the state funding just to do the resource side.
And that's the thing, and you said, yeah, but we want to make sure that we have to look at things like Meals on Wheels. We might not be worried about Meals on Wheels, but eventually you have a parent or a grandparent or somebody that needs it, and you don't want them to go without it. I mean, that's my whole thing.
So we're still back to really needing to figure out if we can work through these things in a month, or do we need a week, 2, 3, 4 more weeks? I guess we got 6 at the most. No, we don't have 6 because we still got to have that election in there, so.
Yep.
It's 6 weeks from today, basically, right? Give or take.
There's no easy answer.
Well, so, the honest answer is, the FinCom needs to be able to
Stand behind it.
agree to commit to doing whatever it takes, and if we're meeting.
I'm sitting out in the, I will tell you right now, I do not stand behind this.
That's
And
fine.
I will not stand up in the front and say, I am in support of this. I cannot.
Right, and I understand that, and I'm not disagreeing with you. What I am saying is, as a group, FinCom needs to be able to decide, to commit, to do whatever it takes to be able to get to the point where we can come up with a balanced budget. And if that means that we need to meet 5 nights a week, then that's what we do. No one likes that, and I understand that. But if we're going to have to do that, I mean, to the point, so where do we go? That's what we have to do.
I mean, I think there's going to be some increases. Unfortunately, I think there's going to be potential increases for some of the things that are happening next week.
So when do we get the final number? When do we get a final number?
I mean, and I want to make it, that's the thing. I think that, do we think that what we have budgeted for dispatch is legit? Someone's got to tell me that, because I don't feel comfortable that that's going to work. But that's just me.
Well,
but I'm more of a realist when it comes to things. Let's not budget low and figure it out later. Let's budget realistic, and I don't think
So would it be practical for us to be able to say that we need a final number by Thursday, next Thursday? Has to be done by then. If we don't have it by then we're pushing things up. Make that declaration, and just go
well,
from there.
we're not going to have final numbers, but we might have more solid numbers.
Right, because the board's not going to meet to actually.
Right, I get it. You won't, but I think.
Right, no,
guys-
once negotiations are underway, I think Mike could come in with more comfort.
I get it, but I don't think. I think.
Well, if we're not
I think I think that there's more discussion that could happen between you quietly without opening up things and to facilitate a better number for us that could potentially go. Because
But if we don't have a final number, how do we do anything?
It's not even material at this point, guys. We're talking about needing to find a 1.3 million. Having to think about $20,000 or $30,000 is not going to impact 1.3 million. I'm sorry, it just doesn't even matter.
okay, then that's fine. Then we can go with that if everyone wants to. Let's, I'm fine with it. But the thing is we're going to have to find that money next year because we're going to have to pay them. So.
Well, so we're asking for 2 million. There's 1.96 in there right now for the override. So 2 million would be the 40K more. There's the difference. And then we'll have to on the balance budget. We'll have to do the same thing. We'll have to add 40 grand.
Why don't you ask for as much in the override as you would need to run the departments the way they should be run? And that way, if the school takes more next year or the year after, you at least have something to cut.
That's the 2 million.
I think it's 3 million.
No,
If you
not
were to-
according to that.
Well, I think to run them efficiently, there's no full-time staff in my department.
Well, no, there was a needs budget. There was a needs budget. And that's what the 1.9 is on the.
It's basically $2 million. It's 2
I thought
million.
it was 3, Gary, when you talked to the department head, you multiple times. So you should ask for $3 million.
We did, way back then we did, and then we got the actual numbers and it came to.
But it goes back to what's reasonable to ask for, what can people afford? Because if we have 50% of our population that can't afford it anyway, what's the point of asking for 3 million? Because you're not going to get it. If you ask for a palatable number, it becomes more possible that it's going to pass. And yeah,
More work for us, though, because now we have to explain what we're asking for the extra million for, and it's more work.
Right.
which at this point in time, on a time constraint, will create a bigger, potentially bigger problem.
Okay.
I mean, I'm not saying we can't, if we can get some information tomorrow that says this $300,000 more is gonna get us X, Y, and Z that we absolutely need, then that's the number we go with, great, and that's what we start advertising, but we gotta start getting the word out there that here's what we need and here's what it is and, blah, blah, blah.
I'm starting to become more uncomfortable that we're gonna have a number and time to be able to do this, Karen.
I guess I have a question, going back to the needs-based budget. Was it communicated to the department heads, like, what they need to efficiently run a department of this size? Or was it in the context of Rutland, like, we would like to have one more staff person, when really we should have 4, but we know Rutland, we would be lucky if we got 1. You know what I mean? Like,
Kind of.
where is that needs-based? Because I guess,
Conservative about it.
right, like, and not to say, I mean, and not to say that we're overreaching and saying that we need 10 people, but I know a lot of the departments, DPW especially, has been
Realistic, not, yeah. You wanna
like
bring
working very
Underfunded.
efficiently, underfunded, and working extremely efficiently. And is there potential to have an additional, I'm using employees just as an example, but an additional employee or something that wasn't taken into consideration, even though a needs-based budget was requested, because it was still in the context of, like, Rutland's not gonna fund it, like, I don't know.
We even bounced back from 22. Mind if I,
No, go right ahead,
we
please.
lost 3 people, or
Three,
1.5
that's it.
people in 22.
Yeah.
We never put them back. We moved them to the utilities. And
We
they've been
lost
helping with that
people when
mess.
Gary was
But
here.
But your needs-based budget, your needs-based budget has those 3 people in it.
I believe so.
Yeah.
And that's the 1.9.
But even still, to be candid, that means you have 6 full-time DPW people for a town with 80 miles?
And that's
really not a big number.
So,
my question and my
That might put
point.
us closer to where we need to be.
Right.
no, but that's not, what the league's asking is, you got 80 roads, 80 miles.
All that.
Do you have enough to do those roads?
I haven't had it, no.
No, so that's what she's saying.
Yeah,
No, even with your new
The
number, with
needs-based
the additional
doesn't meet
number,
your
is it
need.
too
Even-
conservative?
Yeah,
right.
even with the needs-based assessment, we're still not gonna get to where we need to be to
And I think
provide the
that-
level of service. Yeah, no.
I think the police are like that, I think the fire is like that. You know,
We've run it so tight for so long.
Yeah.
Enough the red
You're not
flag for
gonna
a
get-
long time.
You look at the staffing in other tax collectors' offices.
Do you think
Yeah.
I've been doing this just for fun?
So that's the justification for the additional
Well, that's
up
what
to
I'm
3
saying,
million.
yeah.
But I think to Alex's point, when you get to that $1,000 mark for an increase in taxes, it kind of makes people think. We have 2 contracts that we're attempting to settle that have to come into play with the final number. So I think my suggestion to both boards and committees is a 2.5. That will cover everything, puts it at about 750, keeps it under the 1,000. That's just me talking, so. I know we have to decide on a number to make everything work. I want everything to work, that's all.
I just want it to pass.
So Karen,
So my thing would be, again, is by next Thursday, could you please give us what you guys have been talking about and your goals and objectives? And after Monday, you guys can get back to us on what you think, if
it's
there's
gonna
any.
be tough because we're not meeting back
I
there.
understand that, but you guys will have an idea. You guys have an idea. And I'm
Conservative.
fine with not being, but we need that to go forward. So that when we start looking at this, we want to make sure that that number is legit and not already understated.
Worst case scenario.
Right. Well, obviously, the big thing is gonna be contract agreements with the
Yep.
town administrator and the
Exactly.
other, those are the numbers.
Yep.
As far as a grant writer, we have a service that we can utilize whenever we want, at any time. So I always wanted to have funding available for that purpose. But I don't think we're ready to hire any kind of a full-time.
No, which is, so if there's a service available, that's good.
Right, so we wanted to allow funds for that. We talked about intern programs, which would be minimal, things like that. So there are programs that we could take advantage of that would assist the town and provide more services.
But if we document those, we
Right.
could probably document that to be the additional piece.
Exactly, those are the kind of
And
things
those are the
we wanna
kinds of things
highlight.
by
Right.
next Thursday,
Right.
then we could be,
Right.
this is what we would like to say to you. We put a letter, so for your meeting on the 20th, to say this is what we'd ask that you put forward.
So, and I guess that would mean that if whatever you can come up with would be included, what you don't have goes into next year.
Or even if it's additional fire and,
Yeah.
police and DPW, that's palatable.
Yeah.
If you're
And
gonna
what's,
add
I don't know,
people.
if the economic development coordinator piece, because there was talk about hiring that full-time or shared with a grant administrator or something. I don't know off the top of my head what's in the needs-based budget, so those are other things.
Is that in the budget?
No.
Well, we'd even talked about trying to use internships to do projects and such with economic development, other
But
ways
as
of
we
funding
heard,
it.
I mean, most internships should be paid now. I mean.
Well, that's what we're saying, paid. We could even use opera funds for internships because, if we wanted to, because it's one short-term, one time.
One time, right.
So if we wanted to consider starting a program with that, we have an ability to do that.
Right, but I think also making sure that there's space in the budget so that if it's a program, depending on what it is, that should then transition to a full-time position is there and not.
Is everyone in agreement that by Thursday we'll have those numbers? We can put together a letter for the select board for the 20th to put forth a 2.5 override.
So we're gonna stick with the schedule for the meetings, right? I'm either gonna open the warrant on the 20th or I'm not, so that's, I need to know for sure.
By next Thursday, if you get us that, we would let you know
Okay.
by the 20th. Because we have all of this stuff and it's all still, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, this budget is still Jello-like and we need more firmness to get us to the point where we can say, this is where we're at and this is what we're gonna do. And I think, I wanna make sure everyone's comfortable because on the 6th, we're the ones sitting up there having to answer the questions. and-
Well, we should be posting a meeting after the interviews, Tamika, anyway, for discussions.
I'm sorry, what?
We should schedule a meeting after the interviews for the town administrator for discussions and vote for
Well,
a decision.
the board had originally decided that they were gonna do that at the March 20th meeting.
That's what you guys had said at last week's
I'm
meeting.
wondering if we should do it prior to, do you think we should have another meeting?
Well,
Depends.
it depends on what happens.
Right, I mean, we just don't know, but I mean, I'm, as a safety net, should we post something in case we need to have a meeting?
Sure, let's do
We would
both.
have it between then and the 20th, because like FinCom's meeting on Thursday night.
And we have the schools.
Schools,
The schools next Thursday.
Yeah, so I just don't know between, like then if we just scheduled it for the next night, it would kind of defeat the purpose of why we were pushing it off in the first place, if that makes sense.
I mean, I was thinking more like Wednesday night, but it doesn't.
Some of it would have to be based on Carol's availability.
Right.
So-
Well, that's what I was
If we're
getting
doing
at.
it based
Yeah.
on that, then you might as well just do it all on the same night. if
Right,
you
so
do that.
we don't have any input yet.
And I'm
All right, well, let's, all
waiting for Steve to give me an answer.
right.
Okay. So are you guys coming to our meeting next week with the schools or is it just gonna be us?
I'll be there.
Would I ever miss a meeting with the school?
Should I post it as a joint meeting? So that you can
Yes, I mean, historically, we've always both met with the school.
Historically, but that's not to say that we have to continue to
Do
do
you think
that.
all of a sudden I wouldn't meet with the school?
I didn't say you didn't have to. I'm just saying that, you know, why is the schools any more important than the treasurer collector's office or the police or
Well,
fire?
I tried to attend as many as I could. I do like being able to zoom in,
So,
because then I can make faces when you guys make
yes, dear.
horrible decisions.
So, you guys mentioned that you haven't finalized the balanced budget. You want to go through it one more time?
I'm not comfortable with this.
All right.
That's personal.
Because Could we get some guidance from either you or the chair for the board? What do you want us to tell the public? Anything at all? You want to keep it all close to the vest? and
No,
figure out what's going on?
right now, you gotta tell them the importance of an override and say that as of right now, this is what we're at, and we're hoping that it's not gonna be cut, but we're not sure.
Well, at this
all
point,
depends.
these documents have been reviewed in an open meeting,
Right,
so
they-
anybody can access.
They can.
No, but do you want us to put stuff out there or not?
Right, are we doing these recordings? Should we be putting,
I just need some guidance, that's all I'm asking.
I think a generic output that there are significant cuts. I mean, you've been doing that right along. You do that as well as anybody. I think you need to continue to do that. I mean, we got this yesterday. It came with an email that said this is the best the town administrator was able to do with short notice. I agree with Karen. I'm not comfortable with it, but I'm not sure it's not the best model. It may be, but I want to be darn sure, and that's going to take a little bit of time and more discussion. So I'm kind of, back to Lyndon was wanting to know, are we still thinking we can make the current town meeting date? It sounds like we've got a week before we really have to decide
By
that.
next Thursday, we need to let them know,
Right.
because they're gonna be opening the warrant on the 20th.
And so we got a little bit of wiggle room there.
But not much.
I would like to use it.
Yep, that's my thing. That's my opinion.
I mean, it's ugly, and I don't think anyone should hesitate to tell people it's ugly.
Right, we just don't want to come across threatening until we know
Precisely.
exactly what direction we're going to do, and we're going to look at all options to keep all people happy.
As best as we can.
As many
But people have to realize
With what we have
they have to do
available.
their part to do it, right?
Is there a bottom line for DPW that, without an override, it's not getting any better?
I was thinking about when I was sitting here, we have like one clerk who answers the phone now at 15 hours a week. We have a part-time foreman, according to his budget, works roughly 20 hours. All the folks who work on roads and stuff in town are now part-time as a result of this. They're being shared with the utility, but it's not realistic. It's that tight. We have enough gravel to maybe fix 200 feet of road.
Which isn't bad if you don't live on one of them, but if you live on one of them, it's a problem.
How far am I?
Use that sand you're sweeping up.
We can't staff the sweeper.
Didn't you just hear him? It takes two people. So all we can say is at this point, we don't want to inject fear, but
Yeah, but
it's not
generic,
good.
yeah.
A shot of reality without, threats.
I would say that putting a message out of please help fund my department.
Not appropriate.
SOS.
I'm saying that's what you're gonna say.
I think you start with the tin cup.
Oh, Jesus.
If anybody watches, they know that we're talking about overrides, and if you threw it out there now, it wouldn't make any difference. There may be an override, or there's going to be an override.
Well, there's going to have
It's going to be an override.
But who knows how much?
But
Right.
how much and
There's going to be an override. There's
So
no two
just-
ways about
Yeah,
it.
Throw it
so
out
please
there right now.
please help support the override to get, our town looking.
just get educated, talk to
Well,
departments.
Joe's
look for
asking
postings.
specifically, what should he be putting
Well, that's
out?
what I'm
And I
telling
feel
you, you
like
should
we
be putting
need
out, get
to.
yourself educated, look
Yeah.
at departments, look at Facebook and find out
Yeah,
what
the
the
sign in the center of
potentials are.
town.
Right.
I mean, there's already things you can't do.
We
so-
can't take a position on an override.
Nope.
We can just tell people that there are proposed cuts and they should be
Proposed one.
educated,
Yeah.
but we can't take a position on it.
No,
Because it's taxpayer dollars and there's rules and
but you can
regulations.
encourage people to get educated
Yes.
on
That I
what
can
the
actually do.
Yep. Okay.
Are we done? Very tired.
Motion to adjourn.
There's a bottle waiting.
Motion to adjourn the select board section of this.
Do we have a, okay, any other discussion? Did we lose Tom or is he around?
no, he's still here.
Okay, we're gonna do a roll call
Clock eye.
Wait, can I?
and Nichols' eye. Thank you all very much. Always a pleasure.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
we have the school.
Okay. Wonderful.
So, have you touched base with
Could I
Gary at
also
all a little bit about?
all of our school committee members and ask that they attend?
That's good.
I know we usually do not have a problem getting folks from Bay Path to come. We tend to have issues getting our members.
They have that fund set aside for the senior center potential.
I would ask that they be there so that we can tell the market.
And then we can just figure it out.
Thank you.
Thank you, Gary.
Sure. Me either, because I don't like it. So my whole thing is that maybe it might just be one of those things where it depends. Well, you can put that in there. You know what, we might want to wait another week for that. It'll be okay to wait another week.
I think that's when we.
Because next week we've got some major decisions to make to get everything done. So let's just wait the following week for
I
that.
don't think the policy was in place when we did.
I have enough money to get through the March 28th warrant, so it would just be by the third warrant.
We'll be fine. We'll be fine with the following week, so yeah. Are you in a rush to leave?
No. Just, I don't need my computer.
So we have the school next week, and then we're gonna make the decision on the percentage, what the override's gonna be. I would ask everyone kind of look at the budget, see if they see any other places that they could maybe potentially see some. I realize there's not one magical place, but maybe we can put some things back. Nancy, could I ask that by next Wednesday, maybe you can send us the information of what happens to things like Meals on Wheels and all those kinds of things? If the worst case scenario does come down, please. I would want to make sure that we are fully apprised of that, please.
Yeah.
Is that giving you enough time?
I just have to make a few phone calls, which I just ran out of time today.
No,
And out of energy, to be honest.
no, but thank you for what you sent to us, because that does help.
We had a lot of emotion in it, but you know what?
That's what has to happen.
Motion's needed.
It was well written.
Does anybody have anything else they want to bring up, have a conversation about? And I've already asked, we can't drink in public buildings, so.
It's just green tea. I don't know what's in yours.
I was looking at the school number. The
Yeah.
Wachusett percent increase is 9.5. There was a request from all the select boards, and probably FinComs, to the schools to leave that at 4. Is that 9.5
Fund somebody a couple of hours to.
what every town is seeing?
No, it's what we're seeing.
That's
It's what we're seeing.
Right.
Does that 9.5
10 hours a week.
allow them to say they only raised it 4%? Am I making any sense?
Yes, I don't know.
Had decreases, some of the towns had decreases, I think.
But I don't think the overall budget, I think, increased more than 4%.
I think you're right. I was gonna say, I think the overall budget increased more than 4%.
By the board.
I don't remember off the top of my head what it was.
Me either.
But I know Rutland's minimum local contribution went up over 7%.
Because we have 80 more kids going
Right.
too, I know. So
Right.
I know that it's not always the same every year, but I'm wondering if they managed to stay to that 4%.
I don't think so. And look, I don't remember what the number is, but I'm pretty sure.
It's in the presentation that we got from the schools, and they'll be here next week, so.
No, I looked at that and probably forgot.
Yeah, it's there,
I haven't looked at it yet,
because you put it, and I think, and I do think we're gonna have to add the line, to have 2 lines for the Wachusett.
Do we, when we vote that at town meeting, do we vote it as 2 different warrant articles?
We haven't in the past. We have in the past, and then we haven't in the past.
All
So
right.
it's changed.
So
We used to do one is one and one is the other, and so,
Well,
and then we
last
made
year-
change.
It was separated, I believe.
But there's.
No, not last year.
Really?
No, it's been since Mike Nicholson changed it to go back to a one lump sum number, and we've been sticking with that, and I think think this is a year that we might need to make the
But
change
there's
back.
this one line item that we're required by the state.
That's a minimum local contribution. Yep. And that's usually like Bay Path, typically, I haven't read through their presentation, I'll be
Bay
honest.
Path was only minimum local.
They typically do minimum local, and that's it. And when they've gone above, they've warned us 5 years in advance that they're gonna go ahead, and in 5 years, they're gonna go above. So, in that regards,
Some impressive planning.
yeah.
I don't know that I've ever.
They
even
have been
close to that kind of
transparent
planning.
since day one.
That's not even transparent, that's just godlike.
We get transparency through and through from them.
When's the last
and
time
I'm
you could budget
hopeful-
But
5
it's
years
a
ahead?
completely different animal when
It is.
they're able to do that.
But it's, well,
To a better extent than.
Yeah.
yes, but I also think that maybe I'm going to give the benefit of the doubt to the new administration that maybe this year we'll see more transparency and maybe next year even more.
Even if it's ugly transparency.
Even if it's ugly
That
transparency,
would be
transparency is still
transparency,
transparency.
At least ugly would give something for people to see and understand why there's such bad happening.
Yep.
That helps.
Okay, so does anyone have anything else they would like to bring up for next week's agenda?
So we have the school.
The school, then we have to finalize the amount that we want to send to the select board and then kind of let them know if we think we can make the May 6th
Amount of.
override.
Yeah.
They're gonna give us some
Final
inputs.
numbers.
They're gonna increase, they're gonna adjust the budget, measure it against revenue. give us
No,
a
no,
number.
they're not going to adjust the budgets. They're going to give us some additional things that might change.
That's what it is.
Yeah.
We have to tell them a number of the total override amount.
That we'd recommend, and then they place it.
And then we'll probably spend some time going over places where we could potentially cut
Yes.
to make up the difference as well next week, absolutely.
Yeah, because don't forget, the balanced budget that we have in our hands currently does not include the $300,000 for the unemployment that would have to be paid.
Right. So it's really, it's a negative $240,000 budget.
So, I mean, to me, that's but we also have $150,000 more to add to the top line revenue.
Plus, he said there's 62,000, that balanced budget has a balance at the bottom of 62,000, so it's really 200,000 that we have to work with, which if we bring back partial of each would reduce the
Right.
Workers' unemployment.
unemployment that would be needed too, so.
Well, that would, because we have people there that are unemployment, and we have people, but we have some others that will still be affected, but we still want to make sure.
It would
how
save
that
some.
goes. Yeah, and we need to just kind of look at things and say, okay, maybe
It's.
There's a lot of
I
different
went
things.
through it, there's like nothing.
there's some other stuff that could potentially be
really
done. It's
small
not
dollar
popular, it is, but it's a lot of small dollars, but that way it doesn't totally decimate one whole department. I mean, none of them are good cuts, none of them are good cuts. But we need to have several different iterations.